Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 205 on SIFTD Games at SIFTD.net. This is going to be a landmark episode for all the worst reasons. If you guys watched SIFTD HQ, a new episode went up this morning. I explained it a little bit, but I also want to do it here on GameFace because this is our flagship show. Things are bad. You guys are all aware of that no matter where you live at this point with coronavirus and the COVID-19. We've been pretty lucky here in Los Angeles considering our population. We had a relatively minuscule number of cases, but like everywhere else, that's changing now. And it is getting to the point where it is a legitimate risk to get together with virtually anyone live right now. So this will be the last episode of GameFace, kind of as you know it. As you guys know, Matt was not in the studio last week, but both Mitch and I are here today, but this will be the last time. So going forward with GameFace, the show's going to look, it's going to look different, and I think our live streams are mostly going to be what's affected the most because only one of us can be in here at a time going forward until this is kind of all over with. We haven't really figured out yet whether I'm going to be here or Mitch will be here, but either way, it's going to be difficult to do the show in the same way. So the live stream of the show, probably for the foreseeable future, is just going to be a bunch of talking. We're probably not going to have a lot of B-roll in the show. It's going to be a show where we're going to have to do a lot of post-production work to it. So we'll leave here. We'll have the recording of the conversation, and then we're going to have to go in and manually by hand edit the show together with gameplay footage and graphics and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to suck, but there are so many people in far worse situations than us that whatever. We're just going to roll with the punches. So this is the last stream of GameFace. It's going to look crazy polished with fancy graphics and tons of B-roll, at least live. Our patrons, people who subscribe on Patreon, they're going to be able to get the polished version of GameFace. It probably won't be going up the next morning, though, because, like I said, there's going to be a lot of post-production work that needs to be done. But it will be going up the next day at some point. So just like everybody else, we're just doing the best that we can to get through this. And again, I don't know that this is going to be a short-term thing. In all honesty, it's looking like cases are going to peak in a couple weeks, best case scenario. But that doesn't mean that it's over. I mean, that just means that we start down the tail, which could also go on for quite a while. So anyway, just wanted to let you guys know what's going on here. It's got to the point where basically, as somebody who's running the site, I thought to myself, when it gets to the point where I'm nervous about going in, that's when it's going to end, and we've reached that point. So 205. Hopefully this episode won't go down in infamy as the last show we ever saw like this. I know everyone's going through tough financial times right now. Some people are losing their jobs or they're getting their hours cut back or whatever. I just want you guys to know that I feel for you. It sucks, man. It sucks for so many reasons for so many people. And I just want you to know that my heart goes out to any of you guys who have lost your job. Obviously, with the way SIFTD is set up, we might be in trouble too. So everyone's just kind of in the same boat. We just keep following the news and keep doing what we're told to try to keep as many people safe as possible. So anyway, we do have our crew here. We do have Matt on Skype. What's up, Matt Kyle?
Hey, welcome to the minefields.
Yeah, and you can see we have new graphics for the show that hopefully will help get us through kind of these tough times on the site and just in general. We're going to be seeing a lot more picture-in-picture and stuff, a lot more Brady Bunch-like stuff in the show, for lack of a better term. It's just really the only way to do it, and we're really lucky, in all honesty, that technology is at a place right now where we can do something like this at all, to be perfectly honest with you.
Here's the story of a bug named COVID.
I'm trying to figure out.
You can see I'm coming to you from the robot room now.
I got to look at you this way so I can point to you through the window.
Oh, is that? Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing the Brady. I'm doing the Brady Bunch thing.
See, I only see you on Skype.
Right.
So I can't see the show.
Yeah. Matt doesn't actually have like the master video feed going to him. He just has a webcam that's kind of showing the studio. So all I can see is the side of my ugly mug. We also have Mitch, who's in the on shower duty, possibly for the last time for quite a while.
Yeah, this shower ain't clean enough.
I did come in yesterday when I was shooting stuff for SIFTD HQ and like clean everything in here with soap and water water and wiped it all down. So I think we're good, but
Yes.
who
very
knows?
much so.
They're saying that stuff can live on the bottom of a shoe for like 5 years or I don't even know.
It can live on surfaces for days,
Yeah,
depending on the surface. So
Yeah.
it's a little
Now,
nerve-wracking.
to be clear, it can be detected for days.
Okay.
That means you can find RNA strands of it. That does not mean it is infectious that long.
Okay, that's
Viruses are
encouraging.
very delicate.
Yeah, and
Viruses are very delicate.
the crazy thing about it is literally soap just kills it instantly. The bubbles in the soap break up the strands of the virus, and it's just done. So I came in here literally with like soap and water and cleaned everything in here. But anyway, going forward, it's going to be different.
Like I gotta say, I was at Target yesterday. I went out into the waste la la land, and they were like every cashier was wiping down the entire register, the pin pad, the conveyor belt between every customer. Like they were doing it upright.
Dude, I won't touch anything. I won't touch doorknobs. I use my elbow to press elevator buttons or anything like that. I don't touch anything.
Yeah, I mean, I was at Target, and they were wiping down the self-scanning stations. They wouldn't let you touch the station until they wiped it all down completely. And then also in our conversation, Shane, I mean, our reaction has been a little bit different because things have been changing in LA. Like last time I went to the grocery store, 5 days ago, it was fine. Yeah, things were getting picked off the shelves, but now it's a 25-person limit to go in the grocery store.
Yep.
So it's way different. That made us have conversations about reassessing what we wanted to do going forward.
I mean, the good news is that we got some encouraging news here in California yesterday. The hospitals here have been prepared for this crazy spike, and they expected it to start happening in the last couple days, and it hasn't happened. So it appears that what we're doing is working. So everybody keep doing it. What frustrates me about this whole thing that people won't get is the longer it takes for everybody to stay inside, the longer this is going to go on. So if you're feeling selfish and you feel like I need to go out to a bar or a pub or I need to go to a farmer's market, don't. Every time that somebody does that, you're just extending the period we're going to have to live in this hell. So everybody just hunker down for a couple months. Just live on Twitch, watch our podcast, watch all the other podcasts. We're going to be here to kind of help you guys get through it, give you guys some entertainment. I know everybody at this point, myself included, I'm starting to run out of TV shows to watch. So,
and there ain't new ones coming out either because those companies want to wait to release them. So Disney right now is in a predicament because they want to maybe release the Black Widow and Mulan on online for quite an expensive price because they need revenue. Well, and they don't have anything in the works.
Well, like The Walking Dead, for instance, again, I do still watch it, unlike everybody else on the planet. They went through a whole season, got to the penultimate episode before the finale this week, and now the finale isn't happening for like months.
Same thing with a bunch of shows. A bunch of shows have to stop
Supernatural
productions.
that happened with too.
It's crazy. I've never watched a whole season of a show, got to watch the next to last episode of a season, and then had to wait like months for it. But they hadn't got the post-production done for that last episode, and they can't bring people in to do it. So, yeah, entertainment's starting to run a little bit dry. I would just recommend literally living on Twitch and just kind of put together a schedule of like when we go live, when Easy Allies goes live, when Kinda Funny goes live, IGN, all those guys, and just stack them and get yourself a schedule.
Also, is anyone watching this who has finished every game they own?
That's true. This is a good time to get through backlog stuff as well. And there are great games coming out.
For a JRPG.
It's a great time for
Especially
Persona 5 Royal.
Or you got Final Fantasy 7 early.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Persona 5, if you started it now, might get you through this whole thing. That's how big it is. It's like 100-some hours long.
When I first played it, it took me an entire month. I tried to review that game, and it took me an entire month because I spent 120 hours on that thing.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is there are good games coming out, and we're here to talk about them with you guys right now. Nintendo had a big event last week, a Nintendo Direct Mini. We're going to kick off the show with that. I think my overarching opinion of the Direct is we're seeing Nintendo with the Switch shift from 5th to 6th gear. It's at the point where it's a runaway success. It's done very well with first-party stuff, and really the only missing element of it has been extensive third-party support, and that's really what we got with this Nintendo Direct. It was almost all third-party stuff, which, with the first-party stuff drying up a little bit right now, Animal Crossing obviously just came out, but there's not a lot of stuff right on the horizon for Switch from first-party. This is the exact right strategy. Matt, what did you take away from that Direct?
I thought it was pretty good, although it was so focused on kind of the immediate stuff that I felt like, we still don't really know a lot about the end of the year. But it was a nice sort of like, hey, stuff's coming, like, chill out for a second, like, that kind of thing. There was some good stuff, and I mean, the most exciting part of it to me, it was obviously Xenoblade Chronicles getting a release date.
Yep.
The same day as Last of Us Part 2, which is interesting.
I'm guessing there's not a lot of crossover between those two audiences, though.
Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, it's crossover for me.
By the way, you guys are all seeing... Let's go back to Matt's shot there.
Nope.
By the way, you guys are all seeing Matt's Transformers collection right now. Literally.
Part of it.
Do you think you're in maybe the top 10 collections in the world, Matt?
Not even close.
Really? Wow.
No.
That blows my mind.
I mean, I have like 1,500, but like I'm in like Facebook groups where there's people that have like 10,000.
Wow.
Like, it's not. I mean, I have a lot, but like top 10, no.
Not even like top 50 maybe?
Top 100? Top 100 maybe?
Wow.
Like maybe?
That blows my mind.
Like,
Okay.
do not underestimate the... I am, when it comes to the really... I am not the Tiger King of Transformers collecting, I promise you. I am a very moderate person about it.
Okay.
Compared to some of the people I know.
All right, let's start running through this stuff because there's a lot of games to talk about. The first one I want to bring up is Star Wars Jedi Academy. Matt, I think a lot of people who saw this probably don't know what this game is, so maybe you could fill them in a little bit about it.
Yeah, hang on, I gotta pull up some stuff here. Jedi Academy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jedi Academy is a 16-year-old game, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2003.
Yep.
It's the fourth Dark Forces game, the third Jedi Knight game, the second Jedi Outcast game, the last game in that series, and it was an odd. So I'm the only person on the planet who doesn't like Jedi Outcast.
Okay.
Which I thought it was a terrible game. Frankly, I think it was the pinnacle of Raven Software's Hunt the Switch terrible level design, and just had like clunky, like almost random combat. Like, I thought it was a terrible attempt at everything it was trying to do. Everyone else thinks it's the greatest thing ever. Whatever. I also don't like Kyle Katarn as a character.
Yeah, I don't
who
either.
you play as in Jedi Outcast.
Yep.
Now, in Jedi Academy, they decided to jump it forward a year, I think, in the timeline, and set it in a Jedi Academy. And they didn't want to Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, like 12 years after Return of the Jedi in the old expanded universe, and they didn't want to make it. They didn't want to have you play Kyle again because Kyle kept his Jedi powers at the end of the last game, and he'd be overpowered to start a new game. So they decided to set it at the Academy and have you create a new Jedi who's going to school, going to Jedi school. And that was cool because you get to create, you get a male or female. You can pick all these different alien races, design what they look like, design their lightsaber. You get to, over the course of the game, you get to pick dual lightsabers or a double-bladed saber if you want. And the other advantage it has is one of the things that was really annoying about Jedi Outcast to me was that it had really big, long, winding levels that just never frickin' ended. And Jedi Academy does a thing where there's stuff you have to play for the story, but it breaks down into like sections where it's like, okay, here's 5 missions that Luke wants to send you on. Pick whichever one you want. And and you go and do whatever you want. They're sort of like quick little self-contained places. They are all on different planets, and they all have different ideas. Like, some of them are platforming focused, some of them are combat focused, some of them are puzzle focused, and it's just a much better game. Like, the level design is just way more interesting. They clearly let the level designers kind of go nuts with whatever they wanted to do on a bunch of them, and it just feels like a more inspired game than Outcast was. And it has been on the other platforms for a while, but if you haven't ever played it before, and I know a few of my friends that are younger and have Switches have never played it before, and you wanted Fallen Order to be more of like an kind of an action RPG build your character thing where you get to design your own character and not get stuck with Cal as sort of a pre-rolled character, this might be what you're after if you can deal with sort of the jank of a 17-year-old game.
Are you surprised that they've revived this game? It seems very random to me.
They've been, I mean, the backwards compatibility or kind of the resurrection of the old Star Wars games has been in process on various platforms for the last 2 years or so. Like the Xbox One has a ton of old Star Wars games on it, even going back to the original Xbox backwards compatibility stuff. And this is on it. So it doesn't super surprise me. Outcast hit the PS4 a while, like last year. So they are bringing back these old games, I think, just to have some kind of content on these platforms. Because it's better than nothing. Like you're really in better than nothing territory with Star Wars right now, is because of how badly EA has mishandled the license. But like it's not a bad show. I mean, it's kind of tough to play on a controller. I haven't played the Switch version, but I have played it on Xbox One, and you are talking about a game that had a ton of force powers you could map to all the number keys and a keyboard, obviously. So they had to come up with a bunch of weird ways to sort of like switch between the powers, like with a controller, and it doesn't quite work as well. But it's functional. But it does feel these games were pretty tough, even on normal difficulty on the computer. And I feel like even on normal difficulty, they are not as hard on the consoles as they were on PC. Now, granted, Xbox One I'm playing it, it's technically the original Xbox version, so maybe they did that at the time to make it simpler because controller schemes didn't work as well. But it is fun to play a game that's like that old and realize how far we've come, just in terms of how facial animation and the fact that when the character's not moving, the character just stands there and doesn't move. Like there's no.
It doesn't have an idle animation.
No, they just stand there like stone still.
So you think it's
so
like
weird.
crashed or something?
Yeah, it looks like an error, but like it's I think it's the Quake 3 engine or a modified version, so it's a nice flashback to that.
Should people buy it, Matt?
I mean, it's $20. It's not if you're craving some Jedi action or you got a nostalgia pang for these old games. Like, I think it's the probably the second best game in the series. The best game is Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, but almost nobody. There's no console version of that, and the only version I think that works right now is on GOG. You can get it on GOG, and it's kind of I haven't actually gotten it to work properly with my 3D card yet. Like you have to like kind of mess with it a bit, and it's even older. That's like first wave 3D acceleration stuff, so it's even older. So this is a little easier to stomach, I think, for a modern audience. It's cool. Like, and
it's an old clunky Star Wars game, but for $20,
it's fun watching my 20-something friends play this and be like, "This was Star Wars then?" Like, it's like. They're too young to have played this stuff, and they're like, my Jedi Master just wants me to call him Kyle. Like his name is Kyle. It's like yeah, you don't think about how like why does Kyle Katarn have a normal name?
Right,
Besides Luke, he's the only people with an actual real name.
That's true.
In Star Wars.
That's true. All right, next up, Panzer Dragoon Remake. Another game that was shown off in this direct and then just dropped, announced, and then off you go. You can buy it. This is not to be confused with Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is literally a legendary RPG and the one that people really kind of opine over. This is an on-rails shooter. How do you think this is going to fly in today's market, Matt? Because I think Panzer Dragoon Saga would do fine. This game, not so sure.
I don't know. Like, it's hard to predict what things will work and not work on the Switch. Like, people seem pretty open-minded about buying some of these things in a way that surprises me a lot.
Yeah, the right platform for sure for this.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I bought it just because I'm a Panzer Dragoon nut, and I figure any little thing I can throw in the coffer there might help get a Panzer Dragoon Saga remake at some point in the future.
Why will they not do that? Why will Sega not do that? It makes no sense whatsoever. It's just I think it would be they lost the source code, so it would be a ground up remake. I think that's okay. I think it needs to have that done though, doesn't it? I mean,
maybe at this point though, I'd wait to do it for next gen systems. So maybe that's what they're stalling for.
That could be. Yeah.
And I think Panzer Dragoon Saga, not Saga. I think Panzer Dragoon 2 is a better game than 1. So hopefully they're going to do 2 as well with this treatment, because it does look nice.
It does, and this is also coming to PC eventually. It's a timed exclusive on Switch,
and Stadia.
And Stadia?
Yes,
okay.
And Stadia all this winter.
Okay, so you have a little bit of a window with Switch where you can only buy it there, but it is eventually coming to other platforms, so keep that in mind. Next up, an ARMS character is coming to Smash Brothers. Matt, is this a case of they're just running out of characters to put in the game, or do you think it's a good fit?
I mean, I don't know if it's a good fit. I don't care about ARMS at all, but I do keep eyes on sort of the Nintendo chatter online sometimes, especially on Twitter and such.
Hard to
and
avoid.
People have asked for ARMS for a while.
Okay.
Like people do want an ARMS character in there. The hardcore fans do want that game to be represented in the roster, so it makes sense to me. I mean, it's not going to get my money yet, like for the season pass or anything, but like it's not. It to me, it's an indication that they're listening.
Yeah,
I think it's both. ARMS offers a unique way maybe to have the combat be for that character because the ARMS can extend. I don't think there's a Smash Brothers character that has an ability like that. So I think it offers something a little bit different.
No, but my point is that would that break the game? Because it's so out of character for the rest of the franchise to have a character that can operate in the way ARMS characters do.
I think there's a way you can limit it. Maybe you only limit the arm extensions to grabs only, and maybe the arm movement isn't as quick, so it's easy to dodge and you have to time it correctly. I think there's minute detailed changes you can make to the character to be able to accommodate for having arms.
Well, a lot of this stuff just flat out isn't going to work because one of the strategies in ARMS is you send your arms out, but then you can curve them around objectives and other characters. I don't see how that's going to work on a 2D plane. So I think just organically they're going to have to kind of nerf what you can do in the real ARMS game for the character that ends up in Smash.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if you could stand still maybe, and like the character would be standing still when you throw your arms out, but you can use the controller to control the movement of the arm itself, almost like a movement of like a snake.
Yeah.
That way you are limiting, you have the extension of the range of the character's attack, but at the same time you are limiting the character because you are vulnerable by standing still.
It would still be on a 2D plane though, so you'd only be sort of drawing that line of the arms from the side, so to speak.
Exactly.
Which could work. It'll be interesting. I think this may be one of the more interesting characters to ever come to this franchise, in all honesty, to see how they handle it. Because, dude with a sword, that's easy to get into the game. Arms, not so much. So
something I thought that might be hilarious that they could do is the arm person shoots their arm from one end of the map, and then it comes back on the other side and whacks the person. Like, that would be a clever way to handle it.
I don't think people would like that. And it doesn't make any sense either, but I guess.
It breaks the mold of understanding how the rules work. But, whatever. It's Smash Bros.
Yep. And then Xenoblade, as Matt said earlier, Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition is coming May 29th. We finally got a release date for that. This is looking pretty sharp. And it's certainly it's a far better game than the last Xenoblade Chronicles we got. You think this has a chance to kind of be a sleeper hit?
I mean, it can't hurt. It doesn't have a lot of competition on the platform at the time, and it is head and shoulders the best game in the series.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even close. Like,
Which
this
is so odd that
good.
the first entry ends up being the best. Usually it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, that's uncommon, but they strayed further and further from the format on this. Like X was such a weird side thing, which I did like X, but it was such a strange direction to go. I think they nailed all three of the games do a really good job of creating this world to explore and be in. But only the first game doesn't feel like a bad, like, afternoon anime series. Like this X had that weird, it was like watching like an anime series made for like 10-year-olds.
Yeah,
with like
I
all the weird
bounced off
episode
it. I
stuff
couldn't
and all
stick
that.
with it. Yeah.
And then Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is just trash from that perspective from top to bottom. Like, I couldn't take the terrible, weird quote unquote comedy and the bad writing and the weird like TNA designs of all the blades were just embarrassing. Like, it was. Like, it was a game. I don't say this very often, but Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a game I would not play in front of other people.
It embarrassed me. Yeah, I wouldn't have played it in front of my wife. I bounced off that one as well.
It's not a very good story as well.
Fantastic.
It's a horrible story.
Yep, this is the one. If you want to check out what Xenoblade Chronicles is really about, this is the one you should target.
Yeah, I will actually go as far as to say that the first Xenoblade Chronicles, is the best JRPG of its generation.
I'd have to really think about that one, but it's certainly worthy of being in that discussion without a doubt. Next up, Bravely Default 2, another JRPG. This one is really a throwback to kind of the 16-bit era, albeit with upgraded visuals. Not upgraded a lot, but certainly better than what you would get on your Super Nintendo back in the day. When I talk about it being inspired by the classics, it's more about the turn-based combat than anything else. Are you excited for this game, Matt? Did you like the first Bravely Default?
I did.
That was a sleeper hit. It was one of those games that just kind of came out and caught fire.
It did well for the time, I think. And I mean, there was I think technically the third game. They're just calling it 2. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I like the art style. I know it's a little handheldy, but
definitely
the character design,
some chibi going on there, yeah.
But I like it. I like kind of how they're fitting them into the more realistic environments, and I like everything this team has done.
Yep.
So I have not actually played the free demo, in part because like this is one of those games where I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Like you don't need to sell me on it. And, it's kind of like Zelda. It's like, yeah, you had me at hello. Like it's okay. Like you don't need to sell me any further.
Yeah, and as Matt said, there is a free demo on the Switch eShop right now. If you want to give it a go, will help you decide whether you want to spend the money on purchasing it. I don't think they announced a release date yet for this, though.
No release date. But I will say the demo is, I tried it out for a bit. They do let you know, and you should know this going into it, they do make the enemies harder initially, and they say that's purposeful. It's not the default setting they would have when you play the game because they want you to use all the mechanics that they're showing you. But it is a little grindy for my taste, but I definitely will go back and try it again just to see if maybe it wasn't appealing the first time around.
All right, now we're going to shift gears big time. We're going to go from a hardcore JRPG to Burnout Paradise Remastered. What's your favorite Burnout, Matt? What do you think is the best of all time?
Burnout 3.
3, huh?
Yeah.
I always say Burnout 2, because it was really just the crash mode. It's really all that game was. I was
like Burnout 2. Burnout 1 and 2 I also like because they were still doing their own music more then.
Yeah.
And I liked some of the music they put in there. And then when they went licensed soundtrack in 3, I thought it wasn't as good.
Yeah, it lost a little bit of its charm for sure.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And I've always loved this franchise. I've never disliked a single entry in this franchise. But when they started getting away from making the focus crashing, which is what 2 did, it was like, you know what? This is what everyone really liked about the first one, so we're just going to make a whole game that's just about the crashes. The further they got away from that, the less I enjoyed the games, although I would certainly agree that they became better and better crafted as time went on and more polished.
Yeah, I think 3 was the perfect balance for me.
Yeah.
Like between racing game and crashing game. And then it had a separate crash mode to kind of like give you that if you needed it. Revenge was good, but it had like and I do know that this is partly intentional, or at least partly because of the mood of the dev team at the time. 4 is a very angry game.
Is that Takedown?
Yeah, no, Takedown is 3. 4 is Revenge.
Right, okay.
And Revenge is very dark and kind of like dusty and like kind of sepia toned, and like it has a harder edge to it that I don't like as much as Takedown. And then there is a Burnout game I don't like, and that is Burnout Paradise. I think Burnout Paradise does not really qualify as a Burnout game.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just another open world arcade style racer.
Yeah. And like, there's the crash thing where you can bounce down the road for a while and as a wreck of a car, but like that is not what Burnout is. Like, it was interesting at the time because we didn't really have any open world racers to compare it to, but I don't consider it really a Burnout game.
I remember I did the review for Burnout 2 for, I don't know if it was extended play or if we had switched to X-Play at that point. I can't remember. But there's a rule in video production. It's called the Rule of 3. And basically what it means is if you want to show the same thing over multiple times for comedic effect, you do it 3 times. No one ever really explained to me where that comes from, but I think if you think about it, in most cases, that makes sense. Because with 3, you make the point to make it funny. If you go for 4, a lot of times, it kind of loses the humor. in that review.
It's because you establish it in the first one, you reinforce it and establish a norm with the second showing, and then the third time you subvert or undercut what you think the norm is, and that's what we find funny.
Yeah.
That's why a rule of 3 works. Also, it was extended play because it was September 2002.
Okay. So typically it works. However, when I went in to review that game, because I was so fascinated with the crash mode, and that's what I spent most of my time playing while I was reviewing it, I went into the edit bay and I literally put together a montage with 23 crashes in a row. And you go through like the cycle of the rule of 3 like 5 or 6 different times, and then it just starts to become absurd. And I remember when our executive producer came in to look at it, and I was sitting talking to my editor. He's like, the rule of 3, you're breaking the rule of 3. And so I knew the executive producer was going to probably not like it. And sitting and watching his face as it just kept going and going, and watching him go from like smiling to hating me, and then finally it stopped, and he just looked at me and he goes, I like it. I was like, thank God. So anyway, I definitely have an affinity for the crash mode in Burnout. And I mean, to be fair, the crashes in Paradise are still good. They're just not really the crux of the game, which is why it kind of lost me. I agree with you. It's not one of the better entries in the series. Next up.
But I understand why it's like pushed as hard as it is, because it's the most recent and it's the easiest to sort of sell to a modern audience.
Yeah, it's very accessible for sure. It's going to appeal to a much wider group.
So do you think that this is an indication that EA is coming back to the Switch? Or are they just throwing a port on because they're like, it's easy?
I think EA would be stupid to not come back to the Switch at this point. I think also after seeing this Direct with so much third-party support, granted, it's half-hearted, it's ports of older games, but still, it is third-party support. I think as EA sees more and more of this stuff, I think it will start to become convinced that, yes, maybe it's a good idea for us to start releasing games there again. I think EA's problem, though, is that it just doesn't match Nintendo's audience. It's sports games and a lot of bro content and things like that. It doesn't have a lot of fantasy stuff. They should
throw Unraveled on there, though.
Yeah, stuff like that I think is perfect from EA. But otherwise, like, I think it's learned this through sales or a lack thereof that its library just isn't a great match for Nintendo's audience. It's just...
Their older library is, though, if they would ever dig into their vault at all. Like, there's some stuff in there. Like, I think the Wing Commander games would do pretty well. Yep. On the Switch.
Well, also remember when it tried to work with Nintendo on the Wii, it like babyfied like all its franchises. Like instead of putting The Sims out, it was My Sims, and it was like this chibi version of The Sims for kids. And I think EA has realized, hey, we don't match up so well with the Nintendo folks, so maybe we need to change what we're doing to make it match, but that doesn't work either. It's really just about kind of the core concepts.
That was also partly like a mistaken attempt to snag the Wii Sports people.
Yep.
You know, I think there was a lot of that, and now I don't think you do that on the Switch, because the Switch is a more standard gaming audience.
Well, remember how excited we were for the game from Steven Spielberg, or wait, was it Steven? The game that
Boom Blocks,
and we were all excited for this like. This is going to be some crazy fantasy sci-fi, and it just ended up being like a puzzle game.
Well, and
still a great one, but it was just a puzzle game.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is that, they're doing ports, but the other thing is these ports are old ports.
Yeah.
Like, we had Burnout Paradise on console almost a year ago.
Well, I mean, they have to be... Burnout Paradise on console was a lot longer than a year ago.
Like years
ago.
And then I would say, like, another one we'll talk about later, I'm not going to say the name of it, but another one that did come out, I mean, I literally bought it for PlayStation like 4 months ago. So, like, it's not... I think it's too little too late on these ports. I think they're just trying to say, hey, we have them. They work on Switch. We can make more money, just throw them on there. Like, I don't think they're going to have an initiative to say, let's push more of our stuff if we can on Switch. I think if they put it on the consoles and then they can put it on Switch, they'll do that.
Yeah, also, the Boom Blocks was where we found out that Steven Spielberg listened to the G-Force podcast.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Because Adam was at some party, and some guy, Spielberg's assistant or someone, came up to him and said, "Oh, Steven just wanted me to say thanks to you for the kind words about Boom Blocks, and he really enjoys feedback, the show." Huh. And Adam's like, "Steven who?" And then he comes back and tells, I'm like, dude, you can't tell me Steven Spielberg is listening to me. Like, that's not cool. I can't, now I'm just going to think about everything I say too much.
Yep, that's awesome, though. Speaking of more ports, they go on. The BioShock collection is coming to Switch. The first time BioShock will have ever appeared on a Nintendo platform. This, I might argue, maybe isn't too late. Because this to me is a franchise that I think will appeal to the typical Nintendo audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's too late for me. I have this series 3 times over on 3 separate platforms. It's just, all the 2K announcements for this are too little too late, but also a good sign. I guess is what I'd call them.
It's like a harbinger, because...
and you actually got this free with PlayStation Plus 2 months ago. That's how I got these games.
Yeah. But the bottom line is there are a lot of people who own Nintendo consoles that only own Nintendo consoles, and they've never played some of the best games ever made. So I like that at least those folks are going to be exposed to some of the stuff that we've been enjoying for a long time. It doesn't do anything for us. But
you could at least say that there's a strong shortage of games like BioShock on the Switch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to use that stupid subgenre name, but... It's there aren't any really. There's nothing else like. There's no Deus Ex games on it. There's you can get any Prey or anything like that. So it does actually fill a void in the library.
And I think a lot of these games are filling voids. As the lower third says, you can't see it, Matt, but it says plugging holes. Like that's essentially what they're doing with all this stuff.
And I think the portability, like a friend of mine owns a Switch. He'll try to buy anything he can on Switch third party because he likes to take it on the go.
Yeah.
And that's really appealing maybe that's probably the X factor in all of this is that, these games you can take on the go compared to we have to sit at our console for
that doesn't really matter right now, does it?
No, we can't go anywhere.
If you're sharing a TV with other people you're quarantined with, I guess you.
Hey, Mitch, you might want to flip to a camera there, bro.
Sorry, my bad.
What else? They're also releasing XCOM 2 for Switch, Borderlands 2 and 1, I believe, for Switch. So again, really old games. They're trying to squeeze a little bit of juice out of them after all these years, but I think that they will find a welcome home on Switch for a lot of people who have not been buying PlayStations and Xboxes all this time. Then they got to some more exclusive stuff for Switch. They talked about DLC for Pokemon Sword and Shield. There's going to be 2 new areas added at the end of June, and it looked like a bunch of other smaller stuff as well. Matt, do you think this will convince you to pick it up again and play it some more?
It might. I mean, I have been out of that for a long time since I got all the badges. Maybe. It depends what else is out then.
Yeah. I mean, it is typically June is a pretty dead month, in all honesty.
Yeah.
I
don't actually know what's slated for there.
Yeah, so it may find a window there where people will re-engage with it.
No freaking movies to see, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, again, even more movies are getting pushed out of the year to next year. Yeah. It's entertainment's going to start drying up real fast here. So some of this stuff that doesn't
Uncharted movie got pushed, of course, but that was going to happen anyway because they don't even have a script yet. That wasn't coming out this year, you crazy people.
Yeah, some of this stuff that may sound unappealing right now, we may have a whole different perspective on it in about 2 months. So we'll see how that works.
That's a good point, Vincent. End of June is Ghost of Tsushima, so I'll see you later, Pokemon.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Maybe in August.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I think most people would probably agree with you there. Again, there are some people who only own Switches, though, who will play the living crap out of that DLC.
Also a good point from 89 Real Talk there. I think Jedi Academy is a cool thing, but actually the big Star Wars news in this direct was Pod Racer.
Oh, yeah, from the N64 racing game.
That Pod Racer is a huge childhood nostalgia hook for people who grew up with the prequels. Yeah. And I like it, too. I thought it was a good game.
It was good, yeah. It was hard.
And I think that's going to be a big deal, especially for people who are tired of Mario Kart.
Yep. Yeah, there aren't a lot of great racers on Switch still, I mean, honestly. So some of these games are, again, plugging holes in the software lineup. Next up, Ring Fit Adventure is getting DLC. I have a feeling this game's going to get DLC for a really, really long time. This game has
a really natural expansion kind of platform.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking for new workouts, you think about all these workout platforms online. It's like there's that company Beachbody that makes like the Insanity and the P90X workouts. I did Insanity back in like 2012, and it is insane. I'll give them that. But back then, I had to pay like $300 for this set of DVDs. Now, like, you can't even buy that stuff. You just go to their website and you just subscribe to it, and then they just keep giving you new workouts every day. I have a feeling that eventually Ring Fit Adventure is probably going to turn into something similar, where there's just new workouts being uploaded all the time. And it could become a very, very successful product for Nintendo. As of right now, it's sold out everywhere. It's been a slow burn for this game. When it came out, like, I had problems finding it, but then we saw the sales numbers for the first month, and they weren't amazing. And so I wondered, like, maybe it's going to tank, but it has stayed inside the top 5, top 8 ever since it launched. And so I have a feeling that this could end up becoming another gigantic moneymaker for Nintendo if it can get enough units out there. It seems like it's having problems manufacturing enough of the workout rings. That would be my guess as to why there are shortages of the game.
Especially right now.
Yep, exactly. So if you have a factory that's like making toys typically, and you're trying to get an extra line set up there right now, and people are calling in sick because they can't go to work, it's a problem. But I think maybe I discounted Ring Fit Adventure a little too much when I first gave it a go. I did not think it would have the staying power that it has, but I was absolutely wrong. It is doing very, very well for Nintendo, and I think it will continue for quite a while.
Probably a fun game to play in quarantine right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are struggling trying to figure out how to stay in shape. I'm not, because I don't worry about it at all. But a lot of people who are used to going to the gym every day. I mean, Mitch, you were going to the gym before all this happened.
Yeah, I use the roof of my apartment now.
Yeah, a lot of people.
That's because it's the most space. Like, my roommate tried to work out in our living room, and it's tiny.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, how are you doing this?
And you're also starting to smell. So.
Oh yes, I'm like, at least he puts a towel down.
Oh,
so he's nice like that. But I'm just like, you can use the roof. And I think I will.
I went out to my car the other day, and there was a woman in our garage running laps in the garage. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like, you can go out there and run. You're fine. Like, as long as you're not in a mosh pit, like, you're going to be okay. But
it's
she was
probably
literally
better than running by cars that might actually have it on their surfaces compared to the...
Look, you can't live like that. But she was not going to leave, man. She was just doing, literally, it was like 50 feet back and forth, 50 feet back and forth. I was like, if you get to that point, it's probably just not worth it. But
yeah, there's a bunch of weird stuff going on where, things like, I ordered a case of paper towels like 3 weeks ago because I knew I was running low, and so it took a while to get them delivered. But they got delivered, and I left them out there for a while because just I hadn't had time to get out there. And I come out to pick them up, and it's a case, so it literally says Brawny or whatever on it.
Oh.
It's the box that like is labeled like from the factory. And there was someone standing outside my pedestrian gate staring at it.
No way! I'm surprised they were still there.
I'm surprised they didn't jump the fence.
They could have probably jumped the fence, so I think they were thinking about it. And I've never had a problem with packages going missing. I've never had a problem with anyone trying to trespass ever. I have like computer equipment delivered and film equipment delivered, and found brawny paper towels are the things that almost got snatched. And I come out and I'm like, "Can I help you?" And he's like, "Oh, sorry, wrong house."
Yeah, sure it was. Yeah. Yeah, he's looking for the house where the paper towels are sitting on the lawn without the person coming to get them. That's the house he's looking for. It's crazy times we're living in. Next up, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 got its final DLC, and it looks to be the best yet. It's called Shadow of Doom, and it's kind of centered around the Fantastic Four, and as you might guess, Doctor Doom. It looks to be the most full-featured and interesting of all the DLC that's come for this so far.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going on with the Fantastic Four right now?
The Fantastic Four who knows what the schedule for the movies will turn out to be after all this, the dust settles here. But Fantastic Four will show up in late Phase 4, early Phase 5, so probably 2022.
Okay.
In the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was funny. One of the things I've been doing has been reading old video game magazines.
Interesting.
That I have in kind of backlog little magazine holders I have, because I did collect a full run of VG and CE a couple years ago. Andy Eddy's old magazine, and it was a review of Captain America and the Avengers for the Super Nintendo, and the reviewer, this is a 1993 snapshot. The reviewer complains that the game is about the Avengers, and couldn't it be about someone more interesting like the Fantastic Four?
Mitch, you okay in there, bro? Are you still awake?
Just to give you an idea of how how different the landscape is now in terms of what people think about the Avengers versus the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I mean, really, to me, I think most people our age before the MCU, might have thought of Fantastic Four of the original Avengers, really. They were kind of the bigger super group before the Avengers, but then the movies kind of flipped it on the script.
Yeah, they were much more prominent.
Because the Fantastic Four movies were not fantastic at all.
No.
They were pretty much abysmal.
Also, the Avengers had a terrible lineup for years, most of our lifetimes. They were like also-rans, like Captain America wasn't there, Iron Man wasn't really there much. It was like a bunch of like try-hard, like it was Black Knight and like Tigra and like all these like weird C-D-listers. And one of the reasons the Avengers became more popular again in the 2000s and moving forward in the movies is because they brought the original, the core cast. You got Thor and the Hulk and Captain America and Iron Man. Like you get the big guys back. So and a lot of them are in that game, that old Captain America and the Avengers game. But like no one cared about them then.
Yep.
And Fantastic Four always was getting pushed. Fantastic Four had a cartoon series at the time. Like it was always a kind of prominent and it was for years that horrible movie was supposed to come out but never came out. The Richard Corman one.
Oh, right. And, I forgot about that.
And it took this modern day of like where movies determine what people think mainstream about superheroes to ruin the Fantastic Four. So well done, Sony. Another good job.
Yep.
At least we don't have to see that Morbius movie till next year.
Yep. And then the final element of the Nintendo Direct was a special Easter event for Animal Crossing New Horizons. Some kind of a bunny-related event. I'm sure there's going to be Easter egg hunts and all that kind of crap.
And you can craft like tons of bunny and egg-related furniture and everything. Like.
And that is one of the coolest things about Animal Crossing is that how it celebrates the real world and real life. There's big events for pretty much every holiday, your birthday, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of like games that kind of cross over that stuff. It's gotten a little bit out of hand now with so many games as a service because every holiday, every game as a service has something for it, even if it's just like a new weapon skin or a new costume or something like that. And I'm sure once Easter starts rolling around, we'll learn about a lot more related to that particular holiday. But these things are kind of losing their sting a little bit over time, even though Animal Crossing, I would argue, was one of the first ones to really do it. So things are kind of coming back full circle. So that's the Nintendo Direct, and then there was other big news from Nintendo that broke yesterday, and then there were confirmations that went up today. So Super Mario Brothers, it's hard to believe this, it is coming up on its 35th anniversary this year, which makes me feel very, very old, I would just add. And in honor of that, Nintendo is blowing out Mario games, and not the ones that you would expect. You might think, oh, we're celebrating the original 2D Mario. They're going to do something with other 2D Marios. No. Nintendo is bringing back some of the very best 3D platformers in the Mario franchise. So Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy are going to be packaged together as a collection. No
3D World's in there too.
Was it? Or no, they're making a deluxe version of 3D World. So there's going to be a 3D World Deluxe.
It's going to be a home fleet of Mario product this year.
Yeah.
Which is good, because a lot of times this stuff goes by with no comment from Nintendo, and it's annoying. Metroid.
Yeah. I mean, some of these games, it's going to be huge that they're going to be in HD. I mean, Super Mario 64 in HD. I mean, there's that fan-made one that looks freaking amazing. And we
Dolphin and stuff, you can do that. But, like, it's really good. Like, and look, they've done the 2D ones to death. Like, you can get those things on any platform you want. Like, these games need some love, and it's about time.
I also feel like with Super Mario Maker at this point, like, do you really need to re-release any old 2D Mario games anymore? Yeah. Like, I just don't think you do.
Yeah, we're covered on the 2D. This is exactly what I want to see.
Exactly what I want to see. I am freaking jacked. I am wondering, though, what the interest level will be for this stuff, because I'll be honest with you, 3D platformers right now feel like a dead genre. I mean, unless you're a Mario 3D platformer, the market seems pretty limited at this point. And the good news is
I think Mario's got a magic to him, and Mario 64, everybody loves that game.
Yeah.
It'll be just fine, I think. It'll be a big hit.
And I think another thing that's going to help is, I mean, this is the big stuff for 2020 for Nintendo. If you look at its first-party lineup, there aren't a ton of things left like that aren't released. We have Metroid Prime, obviously, but
that's not this year, no way.
Right? Yeah.
But I think it also bodes well for next year, which is the 35th anniversary of Zelda.
Yeah.
Which I imagine that's when Breath of the Wild 2 will show up now.
Yep.
But I really hope that this indicates that we might get some like solid remaster collections for the 3D era of Zelda on the Switch. Because we are still missing the HD ports from the Wii U of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. I would love to see the 3D remakes from the 3DS of Ocarina and Majora's Mask get like a Switch up-res treatment. There's a whole lot you could do. You could find a way to make the Skyward Sword work. You could really get a nice Zelda collection of the more latter-day stuff on the Switch and make that feel like a go-to place for the entire Zelda series.
I'm just excited for a lot of people to really get to play Super Mario 64. I think a lot of people know that it's this classic game that, broke down all these barriers and kind of set the modern 3D action game into motion. I think everyone gets that, but I don't think most people have actually taken the time to go back and play it. And that's because either you had to find an old N64 and dust it off, or you had to have a handheld. And if you didn't do either of those,
or you bought it on the Wii, like they had the Virtual Console version.
That's right.
Or you're a speedrunner and you're playing it on an emulator.
Right.
But again, all this stuff would be nice to have on a popular system, after the Wii U kind of tanked that, and just accessible. And Mario 64. I did like the idea of having a portable Mario 64 on the DS, but I never found the controls on that to be adequate.
I couldn't do it, and I played the living crap out of Super Mario 64, and I literally played probably to 20 stars on a handheld, and I was like, I just felt like I was fighting against it the whole time I played it.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, this to me is a big, big deal. I think a lot of people probably look at this game and it looks so simple, and it's like, it is, but I think that's what makes it brilliant still to this day. It is just kind of simmered down the essence of Mario Brothers into a 3D game. And as time went on, they became more complicated, and sure, they looked better. They probably played a little bit better, although I'm not sure about that because this game's controls are sublime. But I think people getting a chance to play it instead of just watching a trailer of it and being like, what the hell are people talking about? I think a lot of people are going to get why this game is considered one of the best of all time. So I'm really excited for more people to be able to access that game.
And what also helps it is, we had Odyssey come out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And that sold really well. So it probably showed confidence that a 3D Mario game releasing the old stuff again can be doable.
Well, that's what I said. I said everything except for Mario. No one can sell anything, but if you're a Mario 3D platformer, you can. So these will do okay, but the genre in general has really it's gone. It doesn't exist. Ukulele tried to revive it. No one really seemed to care. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
We need Sly Cooper back.
Yep. I do appreciate that they're going to bundle those 3 games into one package instead of making people buy them separately. I mean, literally, this game could sell millions and millions of copies.
Could you argue Crash Bandicoot bucks that trend?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like a 3D platformer, but it's mostly a 2D platformer.
Yeah, it's 3D technically, and it's from that same era. Spyro, the collection, also the same kind of thing.
True.
It feels like that 3D platformer thing. It's kind of a dead genre as far as new games go, but there's a nostalgia hook for things that were 20, 25 years old that does seem to catch properly.
Yep.
So yeah, I think dipping into the vault is the way to get the 3D platformer to sell. Making a new one doesn't seem to work.
Yep. Okay, so that's it. Big week for Nintendo. What's your takeaway from all the stuff we just discussed, Matt? What's going on with Nintendo and Switch?
To me, as far as the Direct goes, it feels a little bit like they're stalling.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of ports and a lot of stuff that's sort of like, hey, look over here. Don't think about the fact that there's nothing coming. We don't have anything announced for the fall yet, because we're probably going to do that in June. Obviously the Mario stuff is rumor, but it seems to be coming from so many different sources that it's smoke, there must be fire kind of thing.
It's confirmed by Eurogamer, and they usually vet pretty hard. So it's a pretty trustworthy source.
New Paper Mario, awesome.
We didn't even bring that up actually.
feel like that series has kind of gone off the rails the last couple of entries, and if this one can, as they say, is going to be more of a throwback to the early stuff, awesome. Like that's exactly how you need to get that series back on track.
Yep, and that could be a big game for the fall if they do indeed kind of take it back to its roots, and kind of ditch the more action-oriented stuff we've got with the last couple entries. That has really turned fans off, to be honest with you. So
yeah, Sticker Star was just kryptonite to me. Like I just did not like that at all.
Most people didn't, and that's so maybe Nintendo finally got the message.
At some point, I kind of switched over to the Mario and Luigi games for my similar RPG fix from the Mario stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and I thought that was really sad. Like I really liked the first few Paper Marios.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about GameStop. I think a lot of people have been discussing how companies and corporations right now are at an inflection point, and how they act and how they treat their consumers and how they treat their employees is something that is going to stick with them for a long, long time to come. People are always going to say, remember when company X, Y, or Z did this during the coronavirus outbreak? And it could be good or bad. It could be like, oh, remember this company paid all their employees for 3 months and they didn't work for 3 months and got paid by the company. Or it's going to be, hey, this company, like today, I don't know if you heard about the stuff with Amazon where a worker stood up and was like, hey, this isn't safe, and they fired him today. And already the DOJ is looking into Amazon like, yo, you can't do that. So you're going to get these different perspectives.
Also, Jeff Bezos could pay everybody double time for this entire crisis and not notice the difference in his bank account.
Oh, I know.
So it's complete not. Remember that when the Black Death happened, that pretty much ended feudalism. That changed like buying power and how people viewed workers and how people viewed who was important to the economic system. Like pandemics change societies. Yep. So keep an eye on some of this stuff. It's going to be your living history here in multiple ways.
Yep. And so all these companies are being judged right now. And it's not that they're being unfairly judged. People are looking at what they're doing during a time of crisis, and they're saying this is your true corporate culture that we're seeing right now. There's no more
and who could have guessed that GameStop wouldn't come out of that looking good?
And so what I was getting at is that if there's a company that has fumbled this worse than any other, it is GameStop. We discussed last week about how GameStop had been trying to declare itself essential retail in order to stay open. And that ploy did not work out. Local municipalities went to GameStops and were like, no, bro, you're not essential retail. You need to close like everyone else. GameStop was trying to say that, well, we sell mouses and keyboards that people need to work from home. That was the angle that GameStop was taking with it. Which I'll give them this. Like, if there was one angle they could work, that's it. Still didn't work. And so you figure, okay, GameStop, with all the backlash they got for that, they're going to get it now. They're going to realize how important this is and how it is indeed an inflection point for a lot of big companies and corporations. But no, GameStop could not learn its lesson. So it did not technically shut down its stores. What it did was it moved to curbside pickup. So you buy the game online, you select curbside pickup. When you buy it, you select the store that you want to pick it up from. You drive up, you wait outside, and then they come out and they bring you the game. Fine. I think most people would be okay with that. But as it turns out, GameStop was not supplying its employees still, after all of this, with the proper protective gear to do the curbside pickup. They did not have medical gloves to interact with the customers. And look, customers handing you your credit card. You have no idea where that credit card came. That credit card could have been used to cut up cocaine the night before. Like, you literally have no idea where. Instead of giving them gloves, GameStop tells its employees to use a plastic shopping bag to exchange the games and the credit card. So what they were doing was they'd take the card with the bag, they'd go inside, they'd run the credit card, then they'd put the game in that same bag and then take it out and hand it to the customer. And GameStop's employees were like, what the heck is going on? Like, this isn't safe. This doesn't make any sense. So once again, in a time of crisis, GameStop has turned into a joke. On top of that, GameStop announced this week it's going to close another 300 stores this year, 300 plus. And then that's after closing 321 stores last year. So in the course of 24 months, 2 years, they're going to close 600 stores. Now, I should mention, currently GameStop has 5,500 stores. So when you hear 600 stores, that sounds like a lot until you realize just how big GameStop is. And then somehow also GameStop managed to turn a profit last year in the fourth quarter, which which is
Funko Pop sell.
I guess so. I mean, I guess at Christmas people buy a lot of that stuff. So anyway,
Yeah, well, I felt like they were trying to stay open here just long enough for Doom and Animal Crossing to release.
that seems like what it was.
I thought that was what they were trying to do.
And they kind of succeeded at that.
Yeah, they made it.
They made it, but did they? So that's the question. Did they really make it? Or is the company's reputation so sullied at this point that there's no coming back? Or was there no coming back a long time ago?
I mean, I don't think there was coming back a long time. I mean, can you sully that reputation any further? I mean, I guess there's the bottom of the barrel always turns out to be a false bottom with this company and a whole lot of other companies. But, I mean, it's just going to be a slow slide down, I think, for the most part, as digital becomes more prominent and people realize that you don't need the GameStop model. And there are better ways to get the GameStop model without having to go to GameStop. And I gotta say there's a GameStop down Wilshire near where I live, and it opened like 2 years ago, and I was like, why is a new GameStop opening here when there's another one like just up La Brea, like in West Hollywood? There's no reason to go to this. And sure enough, they started closing like a week or a week and a half before all the quarantine stuff came down. You know, huge liquidation, like, 80% off, everybody coming to, and of course they closed down. Everything. They got, obviously when the shutdown happened, like basically that was the end of that going out of business sale. And that was like a week ago. I drove past there yesterday. The sign is gone. Like
they're gone.
The building
they're not coming back.
Like you'd think everyone's busy like doing essential stuff right now. Someone decided it was essential to have workers come out and rip the GameStop sign off that building because that building is blank now with a for lease sign up. They desperately wanted that thing out of there.
Yeah. Is GameStop going to survive this?
This? Yeah. Will it survive the next generation? I don't know about that. It's going to be a long, slow, like you say, they're huge. It's going to be a long, slow slide into irrelevance. And it's going to take them a very long time to realize that has happened. So, I don't know if Reggie can save him on this one.
Do you think that stuff like this has that large of an impact on a company's reputation and ultimately its success or failure? Do you think most people are ever even going to know that GameStop has been up to this crap?
I mean, probably not. Although I think their reputation among the people that would consider being customers of theirs was already in tatters as it was. This just is another, you're just shoveling another pile of shit on the truck at this point. It's a big pile. It's a very significant shovelful, but it's still just more evidence on the giant mountain of reasons not to deal with this company. Also, the thing is, like, this company is so easy to ignore that, like, it could have a stronger influence than, say, as irritated as I am by how Amazon's treating its employees. Amazon is sort of a necessity to a lot of people's daily lives, at least in first world countries. And it's hard to give that up, especially when it's probably smarter to have stuff delivered at this point. So it's like, yeah, I can say how much I hate that, but at the same time, who else is going to get me this stuff in a timely and safe manner? In terms of contamination, without having to go out into stores with a bunch of other people who may or may not be taking this stuff seriously.
Right.
GameStop is completely ignorable. Like, I haven't been in a game. I think the last time I walked into a GameStop and bought anything was to get the exclusive Starlink chip after we did that show about Starlink. Like, it was that, which was what, 2 years ago almost?
I think for me it was PlayStation VR was the last time I went to a GameStop. No, over the holidays I did walk into one. Like, while I was Christmas shopping for, like, nieces and nephews, I didn't end up buying anything. But I am someone who does prefer physical media. I know I'm a dinosaur. I know I'm probably in the minority at this point. But I do like to buy physical stuff still, physical games. And thinking about... I
don't know if you're in the minority yet, but I think
it's
by
close.
The end of this coming generation, you will be.
It's close. Like, it's at least 50-50 or very close to it at this point. And so I'm starting to think about, if GameStop didn't exist, where would you be able to buy physical games? So there's Best Buy that's left, is a big box store. There's Target. There's Walmart.
Yeah, that was going to be my argument to
That's
you,
like
Shane,
it.
because where I lived in Minnesota, there isn't very many options.
Yeah.
GameStop is your only option sometimes as a
Yep.
place to buy video games. I think that
about
one,
Walmart?
Yeah, Walmart,
Well,
Target.
Well, we had one
Best Buy.
Walmart, and sometimes they do not have the game when it comes out that day, like GameStop does.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they don't have it. I don't know why. I think they pick and choose what they release with, but I think that one is the thing that might hold on GameStop a little longer, and then two, new generation of hardware is coming out, so that exchange rate might happen at a higher rate this time, so they will have more in the store. People might buy last generation hardware a little bit more to bring in that revenue for them, but that's probably the only thing to hold them off.
The problem with GameStop is that the profit margins for everything it sells they're so minuscule. Hardware, there's like no profit margin. So them selling the new consoles, that's great. I'm glad that they're going to do that. They're going to be there to do that. They're not going to make a lot of money off of it as far as profit is concerned. Even the games, they're making $8 to $10 off of each game that they sell. They're just in a really bad business to make a lot of money. And the bigger box stores can afford it because they're selling other items that have gigantic margins. And, they get people in the door because they want to buy Halo Infinite, and then they try to get you to buy a bunch of other crap that has higher profit margins while you're there. GameStop can't really do that, but that's why you've seen GameStop try to diversify what's in its stores. That's why you're seeing them sell a lot more swag, a lot of Funko Pops and stuff like that, because you can actually make a profit on that stuff. I don't know. To me, Walmart, Target, Best Buy, they're good enough. Most of those stores do have stuff day and date. Walmart a lot of times is open 24 hours, and you can walk in and buy the stuff like right at midnight. The one thing I don't like is how, if you do have big launches now, if you have less stores, less retail spaces to get those launch products, it's going to be a huge CF, because instead of these lines being spread out all across all these different stores, now they're going to be consolidated into one. And maybe it's good for the industry to have 5,000 people outside of like a Best Buy. As a consumer, that's not something I really look forward to anymore. It's hard to understand. So if GameStop's gone, it's hard for me to see another chain coming in and taking their place. Like, I really feel like it may be the end of the dedicated video game retailer, minus like the ma and pa stores.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it seems pretty likely, and more people are just going to shift to digital, and it's especially as you continue to go down this path of like what good is the disc to you anymore when things are so updated all the time and change completely once in a while. I mean, why in the world did anyone buy? I mean, you could stop this sentence after the next word, but why did anyone buy Anthem on disc?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: there are times where I feel burned by having bought a physical copy of something, because I have to, every time I want to play it, I have to go and dig up the disc and put it into my console to play it. Whereas if I have a digital version, you never have to do that. So there is actually some inconvenience with owning the physical version now, which is a little weird. But
I just don't think you need GameStop for that. I think you can have that you can have that on Amazon, you can have it on eBay. Best Buy takes used stuff now. Like Walmart takes used stuff, I think. Like, I just don't see GameStop used to have stuff, the market cornered on that kind of trade, especially after they they merged with FuncoLand and EB and Babbage's and Software, et cetera, and basically became a monolith that forced out all the mom and pop shops. But like, I just don't think you need that anymore, because the big box stores have sort of moved in on that, and you can get effectively the same deal without having to deal with this annoying company anymore. I don't traffic in physical games anymore, except for certain collector's edition. Like, I will get the collector's edition of Xenoblade Chronicles, but like, I have found it's more convenient and simpler to just cut the middleman out on that. And should the day come when you can no longer bring your games forward with you digitally, I guess I've screwed myself. But at the same time,
I don't see that happening, Matt. I really don't.
Not.
Yeah, I think you're good. I think you'll be all right. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about BioWare. It's been a while since we've really heard anything from this studio, and maybe for good reason, because its reputation also has kind of taken a hit over the last half decade. I don't think people still consider it to be like a top 5 developer in the industry like a lot of people used to feel about BioWare. But we're starting to see some rays of hope from the studio. A listing was listed on EA's job hiring site looking for basically a lead developer for a BioWare game based on one of its fan favorite IP. So a lot of people are trying to figure out what the game might be. I think most people have decided at this point that it's probably a new Mass Effect game. I would leave the door open that Dragon Age 4 could just be going into full production, and perhaps maybe that's what they're talking about.
That is Dragon Age is in production. I mean, it could be that. The other possibility is to some kind of like consultant team for KOTOR.
Interesting.
Because presumably there would be, BioWare is not making the new KOTOR that's been rumored, but presumably there would be sort of a contact team as sort of an advisory capacity. In the same way that like the Horizon Zero Dawn, like Guerrilla Games had people working on Death Stranding in some kind of capacity because they had experience with the engine and such.
Yeah.
That could be it. I mean, because otherwise you're really just talking about Dragon Age or Mass Effect. Or on some kind of weird outside curveball Neverwinter Nights. But I feel like
that would be a curveball for sure.
The D&D stuff has gone a different direction, and I don't think it's involved with them anymore because of the EA situation. Like really, that's it. Unless you want to stretch the truth and say Jade Empire was a fan favorite, I don't know if that really.
I don't even know. I'll be honest with you. I don't even know if it was a fan favorite, Matt.
I don't think it was.
I think it was a favorite of ours. I think there are certain people that like.
I didn't like that game at all.
Oh, you didn't like it? Okay.
I didn't. I barely got 3 hours into it. I thought it was terrible.
I think a lot of people didn't like it. Yeah, so I think the chances of that are slim to like zero. To be perfectly honest, I don't see that happening. But
personally, I hope they're talking about Dragon Age because I would prefer that they just leave Mass Effect alone, except to do a remaster of the trilogy.
So that brings up a good question. What happens to Mass Effect? Is it done?
It goes away. Like they're done. It's done. As far as I'm concerned, Mass Effect is the story of Shepard, and it's over. I don't think Mass Effect Andromeda should even have been made. I think Mass Effect Andromeda. I guess I should say Mass Effect Andromeda could have been made, but it should have been called something else.
Yeah,
could have been a new IP.
A new IP.
Or Mass Effect should have been not Andromeda, but do something different with the franchise, but not exactly what they were trying to do there. Because what the elements they were trying to play with didn't work.
No,
well, I thought they worked.
Also they took out too much of what made Mass Effect interesting, what made Mass Effect Mass Effect. Like you got rid of 60% of the alien races that made the Mass Effect world Mass Effect, like because like their colony ships hadn't arrived yet or whatever, and I'm just stuck with a bunch of Turians and the new race was what I thought was uninteresting. It was just sort of a bunch of Klingons.
It was only one race too.
Yeah, there was nothing to find in that new galaxy that managed to fill in the world in comparison to what we lost by leaving so much behind. And maybe that would have gotten better as the planned trilogy developed, but you didn't get to make that planned trilogy. So it's almost like instead of making an entire game that feels like an Act 1, you should throw the kitchen sink in to make the first game good. And I think that's a lesson that way too many games have not learned this generation.
Do you think Andromeda would have been better received if it was just called Andromeda and not called Mass Effect Andromeda?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, I still don't
too.
think I would have liked it a whole lot, but I do think if you had not had the Mass Effect expectations placed on it, it would have been met with a lot more forgiveness.
I would definitely agree with that.
Not in the way it launched, because it was clearly launched underbaked.
Yeah.
But if you were not trying to launch it as a Mass Effect game, maybe you wouldn't have had so much pressure internally to get the thing out when it came out, and it wouldn't have mattered so much to follow up on the hotness of Mass Effect, and you could have been able to justify the idea of like letting it's a new IP, it's got to make a first impression, so let it bake fully.
I would also say Mass Effect fans are some of the most rabid gaming fans in the industry.
Well, it doesn't help,
or at least they used to be.
Well, it doesn't help because the third one was so controversial with the ending.
Yeah,
like, that one changed my perspective on viewing video game companies and having them almost in a sense change an ending of a game because of so much hate was really interesting to watch.
It's really stupid, if you ask me.
Oh,
I've been on record for a long time about this.
I think it was a bad call, absolutely. I think it's their story to tell. It's not for us to tell them how it should finish. But to see how much of an impact that actually made in college, I was extremely surprised by that.
I also think that when they did that, it gave their
that
fans license to then trash Andromeda. Because then they realize, okay, if you change the ending of Mass Effect 3 because I whined on the internet, I can get you guys to do anything. So if I can rail on Andromeda hard enough, I could probably get you to change it into what I want it to be instead of what you guys envisioned it to be. It was just a really dangerous and dumb precedent to set, I think.
I disagree with that on two fronts. First, I think Mass Effect 3 is fine.
I agree. I didn't say it was bad.
But the change they made to the ending is a big improvement. Like, the ending, what they did to change the ending, they still made it just pick 3 colors. They didn't change that part really, but they added more of an aftermath and got into like what happened with all the characters in the epilogue that they added. That was a big improvement in what it should have been in the first place. So while I don't agree that, because they didn't change the ending in the sense that like they changed the triple choice you had to make at the end with the kid on the space station.
Yeah. Or what happens
which
ultimately.
People were complaining. Yeah, it still turns out the same way. They just go into a little more detail about what happens to all these characters you care about, because the reason Mass Effect has a hook is because you care about all these characters, and they didn't address that properly. And then later on, they put out the Citadel DLC, which is really the best Mass Effect thing ever. That Citadel DLC is the real goodbye to all these characters you love. And then the second part of that is, as someone who is fine with Mass Effect and more or less fine with the ending of Mass Effect 3, because I think all of Mass Effect 3 is the ending. Like, Mass Effect 3 is one long ending.
Yeah.
And just the very tip at the end is like, oh, that could have been a little better, but it's fine. But then I hate Mass Effect Andromeda. Like, I think Andromeda is a terrible game. And I don't agree with being entitled enough to sort of like yell until you think they're going to change Andromeda, because they didn't. You can't revamp Andromeda that hard because they just reskinned Dragon Age Inquisition. There's only so much you can do with it. But it was launched in an incredibly broken state, and they did deserve to get roasted for it. Maybe not as harshly as they did, and they were sending death threats to people and all that crap. That's just sort of like what kind of online
that's par for the course
outrage has become. But Mass Effect Andromeda was a terrible misstep on just about every level. And Mitch is right. Like, coming off the heels of how a good chunk of the fan base reacted to Mass Effect 3, it was redemption time for a good chunk of the fan base, and there was a swing and a miss in an amazing way.
Well, and I think the blame should be not at BioWare, it should be at EA, because clearly they forced their hand to release this early when it was clearly not ready.
Yep.
Yeah, and they spread them too thin, and they gave the project to a team that had never made anything like that before, and like it was a management failure from the top down, without any question.
Yeah, some great articles written about that whole thing.
Management isn't the one who suffers for it, are they? Because Montreal's the one that got shut down.
Yep. So are we all in agreement that this is probably a Mass Effect game, though, that they're talking about?
I don't know. I mean, it might be the Mass Effect remasters.
That would be interesting.
Because they keep teasing stuff about like, oh, there's something coming that you're going to like in terms of the remaster stuff. EA had been doing that since the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And it would be, it's certainly at the point where they need content. It would be silly not. Oh, sorry.
Glad you're not here, Kyle.
That's a sneeze, not a cough. I'm fine.
I'm kidding, obviously.
But,
I wish you were here.
I think it would probably be a Mass Effect game of some kind. I still feel as if EA still understands they have a hot property on their hands, even if with this massive blow-up they had with Andromeda, I think they understand the fan base will be behind them if they can bring back its dominance again. Even with a remaster or a remake would be good.
I think this is more likely Dragon Age. I think they are staffing up an all-hands-on-decking Dragon Age 4 because they have got to get that game finished.
Yep, that's what I thought too, but it seems like I'm in the minority. Most people seem to think it's Mass Effect, but
I think that's wishful thinking.
I think the other thing too is if it were Mass Effect,
I call it wishful thinking. So I don't even know if I call it wishful thinking because I don't want them to mess with Mass Effect anymore. Like, stop. Like,
the other thing too is if it is indeed Mass Effect, we're talking about something we're not going to see for another 5 years. So yeah. I think it's more likely it's Dragon Age 4. They're just ramping it up. They're getting to the point now where if they were making the game at Ubisoft, all the other studios would start getting involved in the game's development, and I think they need someone to kind of corral all that stuff. So,
and some poor PA would have to start compiling the 30-minute credit roll now for the 2021 release.
Yep. So I have not lost all faith or hope in BioWare. I do believe there are still some talented people there, and I hope EA has learned its lesson with how it handles BioWare and it does things differently going forward, because in all honesty, that is the only way its reputation is going to be rescued. That's what I would say. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about another depressing topic, which is it appears that Gamescom is going to be canceled. They haven't canceled it yet, but they've already announced that they're going to be doing big digital initiatives, bigger than ever before, around Gamescom 2020. Gamescom goes down in August of every year. So if you look at where we're at right now, April, May, we're like 6 months away still from the date for Gamescom, but we're not 6 months away from people having to book flights and book hotels and for the publishers to start getting their booths built and start worrying about the logistics of the show. All that stuff is going down right now, which is why you saw E3 pull the plug so early, because it realized all this stuff's going to be put on hold and the logistical end of it just isn't going to happen. And I think
anything that involves international travel is going to take longer to come back to normal. Like, there's a good chance that by the end of May, by the end of June, we're going to be kind of seeing most of the end of a lot of the really hard stay-at-home lockdown stuff.
Yeah.
But international travel is still going to have to be very closely monitored until there's a vaccine available, and that could be August next year at the earliest. And on top of that, you don't know how reticent people are going to be to fly in general. I mean, remember what happened in
go
the
to a building
9/11.
with like 200,000 people all jammed
Remember
together.
the aftermath of 9/11 where people just wouldn't travel because they're afraid of terrorists. And this is a much more present danger than being one out of 3 million flights that actually has a terrorist on board. I remember after December after 9/11, I took my girlfriend to Disneyland around Christmas, and there was no one on the plane.
Yeah,
like you wouldn't believe it.
I was on the East Coast when 9/11 happened, and I literally flew back like 2 days after 9/11, and it was me and 3 other people on the plane flying back to California. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. But I think the bigger question is, when are people going to be okay with being around 200,000 other people? Have you seen the crowd shots from Gamescom? It's crazy. Yeah. It's like a mosh pit of 200,000 people. And I hate to say this, but I'll be honest, as someone who's gone to a lot of these conventions, hygiene isn't always the first concern for a lot of these people. So
that's for sure.
I mean, let's be honest. Gamescom is one of the last places I would want to go, even 5 months, because here's what's going to happen. We're going to get the all clear and the go back to your normal lives thing. That virus is still going to be going around. So until that vaccine is out there, and God knows when that's going to happen, it's a risk still. Like, the risk will be lower, your chances of getting it will be lower, but then as you start to let your guard down and you start going around large groups of people again, the risk goes right back up, because all it takes is one person at Gamescom to have the virus, to infect literally. If you really look at it, that one person could end up infecting like 200,000 people. Not just the people at the show. Those people go home and they get their wife sick or their husband sick or their brother sick or whatever. And then the brother gets his friends. I don't know. I just don't know when I see people feeling comfortable enough to start going to major conventions again. I just don't.
It'd be closer to 2 years from now, because you need the vaccine in place. You need the vaccine to be widely distributed. You're talking about 18 months minimum for vaccine with testing. That's August 2021, and then everybody has to get it, and then everybody has to feel comfortable again.
Yeah.
Which is a hard thing to do. Like you're talking about something that is going to leave a psychic wound on the species. Like,
yeah, you're right.
No one is going to be the same after that. It's going to infect how we think. Not infect, but it's going to impact how we think about interaction. Like handshakes might go away for a while.
Oh yeah.
Just in general. I saw an amazing tweet today where a guy was talking about being at home, working at home, and his 5-year-old got angry because he said he had to do work today, and his 5-year-old's crap he did yesterday, and he's like, I have to work today, it's Monday, and his 5-year-old yells at him, Monday isn't a real thing. And he's like, and I'm just still sitting here with that, and I'm like that's amazing. Like that's it. Like that's and Daddy doesn't have time for the 5-year-old kid's metaphysics right now because he does have to earn a salary, but it could change how we look at that. It can change how we look at large gatherings. It could change how we look about how we work in general. it's going to have this impact that is going to make it very hard. I mean, look, 20 years after 9/11, and we're still like okay with taking our goddamn shoes off because one guy tried to do a shoe bomb once.
Yeah, I know.
Yep. People are afraid of these things they can't control and these invisible threats, and it's going to be a very long time before a mass number of people are willing to do something like Comic-Con or Gamescom again. And I think that's just human nature.
And I mean, you start extrapolating that out. A lot of my friends are DJs, and that is how they make their living. It's what they've been doing for 30 years. It's the only thing they can do. They're my age. They're not like 21-year-old kids who can be like, oh, that sucks. I'll just learn this instead and do a career in this. Like, that's when you get to a certain age, it's very hard to pivot like that. So I have friends who, their living depends on people feeling comfortable around thousands of other people. And they're all pretty much at the point where they're just like, it may be over. And I have friends who throw big music festivals with literally 200,000 people. I mean, that whole industry may be gone. It's just until
it won't be gone forever, but it'll be gone for a while.
I mean, again, people are not going to feel comfortable until there's a vaccine, until they know that if they were to get it, that they could get something and they're not going to die.
Well, and that's why these steps right now, the preventative steps, are so important because what you're slightly talking about, Shane, is a second hump, is what they call it, is, when people think they're comfortable and they start going out again and re-socializing, then the virus may pop up again and have a second hump. It may not be as big, but it will be there. And so it's all about the preventative and just how soon is that second hump going to appear and how significant will it be will decide how people will be comfortable when it comes to socializing again.
I guess what I'm getting at is
probably going to roll is like you're going to have. I don't know if anyone's going to actually sound it all clear. I don't know if anyone's going to take responsibility for doing that. It'll be probably more piece by piece, governor by governor, or something like that, or maybe even city by city. But like there will be huge parties, and everybody will we're free, and then a second spike will happen, and we'll have to put back this shelter at home order, and after that, people will be paranoid about it for the remainder of the time until the vaccine can be proven effective.
I think what I'm getting at is right now we're discussing Gamescom 2020 and E3 2020 and Comic-Con 2020, and I don't even think that we should be discussing those anymore. I think the real discussion is E3 2021, Gamescom 2021, Comic-Con 2021. Are those going to happen? That to me... I don't know. I mean, I
think it's a little optimistic to think that the Olympics are going to happen in 2021.
Exactly. Like, I wouldn't count on anything right now. And, a show like Gamescom, they make all their money from ticket sales, people coming, because, the general public can go there. Are they going to go? Hell no, they're not. So I think, discussion over stuff like this happening or not happening this year, I just think it's a moot point. I just don't see it. Even, like, sporting stuff like NHL and NBA, NFL, like, I think the only way they're going to be able to restart those things is if they play in empty arenas. Like, I just don't see 20,000 people feeling comfortable enough to go into an arena and watch a sporting event. Or 80,000 people in a football stadium. I just don't.
Yeah. So what is life like for you as a giant sports fan to have no sports?
Well, it's not like...
Is it weird?
It's very weird. It doesn't bother me that much because I have so many other things that I'm interested in. So it does suck. Like, right now the NHL playoffs would be just about to get started. And, I love that. Hockey's my favorite sport. And, the Penguins probably would have made the playoffs, and I'd be gearing up for that. But, I have so much other stuff that I enjoy. Like, since I launched SIFTD, I haven't really been able to, like, DJ or produce music much. So, I'm never bored. Ever. I cannot remember the last time I was bored. As soon as I finish something, I have 20 other things.
I'd love to be bored again.
Yeah, I just don't. I have so many interests that take up so much time, and I don't really have time to do them anymore because of SIFTD. So if I were to have any downtime, and I haven't since this all happened, it's actually been crazier because Mitch has got here, and we've been doing more content and outputting more. I'm working more than ever. So it's been a good distraction, I think. I think if we hadn't kind of done SIFTD 2.0, and we hadn't kind of shifted gears and been doing a lot more stuff, then maybe it would bother me more than it has now. But honestly, I just don't even have time to think about it. I do feel bad. Like, I'll flip on ESPN at night, and I'm just like, y'all are screwed. They're screwed. Like, there's nothing they can do. Like,
Yeah,
they have
the
a
only-
whole business built on something that's probably not going to exist for the next, 18 months.
Time
Well,
to
the only
triple
thing
down on the marble racing.
Well, the only thing that's really helping them keep existing is the NFL is still going. Like, I think they spent 4 hours on free agency,
Yeah.
and they never would spend. They maybe would spend 2.
It's
but
not enough, though.
4.
That's not
And it's
enough to float a whole
No,
network.
Absolutely, and I think even there's the threat of baseball being canceled
Oh,
because
it is going to be canceled.
I would not be surprised if
Oh,
it's
yeah.
canceled because playoffs are in the fall, and
Yeah.
so you can't have a 1 month
Probably not going to
season.
be an NFL season.
No, I really don't think there will be. If they do, they'll play the games in empty stadiums. And they may very well do that because
could.
the NFL
Yeah.
in particular
Too much money not to.
Well, the thing with the NFL is it doesn't really make any money off of ticket sales. The NHL lives or dies based on how many people come to the games live. The NBA, to a lesser extent, but still a big deal. The NFL, the money that they make from ticket sales is nothing. They make all their money from their TV deals. So if they can figure out a way to still have their games on TV, but people can't go to them, they will absolutely do it because that's where all the money comes from.
Also, this year's Game Awards is just going to be Jeff Keighley sitting next to a Yule log listing winners.
I mean, it might be, honestly. Like, it may be.
Yeah.
Remember the one year, didn't we do, G4 in a basement or something? Or, no, the VGAs were in a basement last year.
VGX, like the
Yeah.
first year after Spike, like it was just like in a basement, and Joel McHale showed up and said everything sucked.
I mean, that's probably what we're looking at for events going forward. In all
Or
honesty.
even something like the iHeart Music Awards were supposed to be out, and instead they did at-home performances where artists would basically video phone a performance instead of doing it live on the stage. That could be something maybe the Game Awards might start looking into in regards to awarding the winners. They would let them know ahead of time, and then they could do that interviewer exception of the award on Skype.
Yep, they're going to have to get creative. That's all there is. Everyone is. We're going to have to. Starting with next week, we're going to have to get creative in how we keep doing GameFace. And it's just the way it is. You know, I'm not moaning or whining about it because everyone's in the same boat. We all just have to roll with the punches and figure out a way to make it happen.
It's a good thing we've had
crazier than others.
15 years of. It's a good thing we've had 15 years of low budget internet production stuff to get us ready for what entertainment's going to be now.
It's true. That's all YouTube was this whole time. It was just preparing us for our isolated future. So anyway, yeah, I don't see it getting any better anytime soon. And right now, Gamescom isn't technically canceled, but do not buy flights to Germany. Do not book a hotel room. I don't think there is any way in hell that Gamescom 2020 is going to happen. All right, let's move on.
And maybe don't buy stock in airlines
Yeah.
while you're at it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, you wait another 4 or 5 months, maybe you just buy stock in everything because it's eventually all going to shoot right back. This is how the rich get richer.
Disney.
This is it right here. This is how the rich get richer in America. Because when everyone's down and out, average people like us, we can't afford to just dump $5 million into buying stock. But that's what the rich people do. They wait till the market crashes and we're all screwed. They buy a shit ton of property when it's bottomed out. They buy a shit ton of stock when it's bottomed out. And when it all inevitably goes back up, they get more rich, and we're still scrambling trying to buy our first home. It's capitalism. That's the way it works. So no easy answer. It's going to be interesting to watch how this all shakes out. All right, let's talk next about a game that was rumored for like a week, and then it came out like within a week, and that is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Remastered. The first...
I found out about this morning. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know that it came out already. Like, what happened?
So like a week ago, a listing appeared. I think it was on the Korea Ratings Board website, the ESRB site for Korea. And leaks have come from that ratings board site before that have all been legit. So people were like, man, like stuff just doesn't pop up there and then it's a lie and it's fake. And so people at that point were like, yeah, it's happening. Nobody thought that it would be coming out today. So, by the way, it is available right now. Announced officially this morning and launched officially this morning. A complete 4K rework of the campaign of Modern Warfare 2. There's no multiplayer. It is just the campaign. But it runs in 4K. It's only available for PlayStation 4 today. But it is coming later to Xbox One and PC. But once again, timed exclusive for Sony on a big Call of Duty product. I know the last Pactor Factory is talking about how, third-party exclusives aren't going to be a thing next gen. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. Because Sony, for all intents and purposes, does have the exclusive on Call of Duty right now. It gets everything COD first as a timed exclusive basis.
They literally have 2 things this month. They got Final Fantasy as well.
Yep. So
they're dominating the timed exclusive right now.
Yeah. Nintendo has a couple, obviously, we just talked about.
And the DLC, which I did not know about.
The what DLC?
I guess I'm stuck there. Control.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very good.
Control DLC is timed exclusive, and I bought Control on the Xbox, so I guess I'm stuck until June waiting for that.
Yeah, we actually review the DLC for Control on SIFTD HQ today, so if you want to know whether you should buy that or not, go check out that show. That was actually Mitch who handled that. He did a great job, I would add. Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, coming to 3 platforms, only available for PlayStation right now, but it is available right now for PS4. Matt, what do you remember about Modern Warfare 2?
I remember no Russian.
Yep.
And,
one of the most iconic scenes in the history of gaming, I would say.
Yep. I remember Russia invading America.
Yep.
There's a lot of street fighting on the suburban streets of America, like a lot of street fighting there, which is surreal at the time. Now it doesn't seem all that great because hey, it's 2020. Who knows what's going to happen in April?
Yeah.
And I really liked it. I thought it was excellent at the time. I haven't played it in probably 12 years, but I really like Modern Warfare 1, and I like Modern Warfare 2's campaign even better.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the last Call of Duty I liked until Infinite Warfare, campaign-wise. But I thought it was very well done. I think it was the peak of Infinity War's campaign design skills until Titanfall 2.
Yep. At the time it came out, I believe it was the best first-person shooter ever made. Modern Warfare 2, I don't know if you remember or not, but it came out the same year as Uncharted 2. And I've done a lot of Game of the Year discussions across the years, and I will say that was the most difficult Game of the Year discussion I've ever had, deciding between Uncharted 2 and Modern Warfare 2 for Game of the Year that year. And I agree with you. This was Infinity Ward, full flight, taking all the lessons it had learned from Modern Warfare 1 and applying them here, but having more leeway to actually work on the details of the game. I think some people would fairly argue that the first Modern Warfare is better. I don't agree with that, but I could see that perspective completely because this does complicate things a little more. There's more vehicle stuff than there was in Modern Warfare and things like that. But to me, I thought that just really mixed things up so it didn't become as monotonous. And I think I appreciate that more now with the modern Call of Duties than a lot of people did back then. But even when I was evaluating, I was like, oh, this mixes things up. It doesn't turn into this just one shooting gallery after another thing, which in a lot of ways I felt like the first Modern Warfare could kind of settle into at times. Just a great shooter. Multiplayer was freaking amazing too. Just a total complete package. So I like you, I have not played this campaign now since I played it way back when it came out. So I would be interested to go back now, having played so many shooters since then, to see if this still holds up, and I think I probably will. I don't know if Activision sent me a code yet. I haven't really checked my inbox since this morning because I was doing.
Was that 09? Was that when that came out?
That sounds right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Modern Warfare 1 was 07.
Yep. So 09 makes perfect sense as well. I think it was. And Uncharted 2, if I remember, was 09 as well. So yeah, that all lines up. But it is, at least, back then, 11 years ago, it was an amazing campaign. I'll be interested to go back and give this a go now and see if my opinion of the game back then still holds up now. Times have changed, but not all that much in this genre, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it's still pretty much the gold standard. In terms of campaign design, anyway. Yeah,
you play, if you just played the last Call of Duty's campaign, it's not all that much different from this. It really hasn't evolved all that much. And I would argue that there are more memorable moments in this than there was in the Call of Duty that just came out. So
yeah, I think the series has eternally been chasing the nuclear bomb of Modern Warfare 1 and no Russian since those games came out, and I don't think they've ever matched them.
Yeah. And yeah, they have not removed No Russian from the game. It's still in there, except it's in 4K now and probably just a little bit more disturbing than it was before. It'll be interesting to see a lot of people maybe playing No Russian for the first time here over the next couple months and seeing their reaction.
I was going to say, Shane,
online.
that was probably the one game that a lot of kids around my age, parents would not buy this game for that reason.
Because they heard about No Russian.
They would buy any other Call of Duty game. They would buy any other rated M game, but that was a clear no. And I think it was usually only like 1 or 2 people had it, and that's how we were able to play it as kids. But it was very much a hard no. And so I expect potentially people will be attracted to it because they've never played No Russian.
Do you think it'll sell?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Modern Warfare 2.
I get that. But it's one of the best-selling games of all time.
Also note that Modern Warfare 2 is now as old today as Ocarina of Time was when it came out.
Wait, what? Okay, so when Modern Warfare 2 came out, Ocarina of Time was 11
years old.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Wow. So it's been 22 years since Ocarina of Time.
Yep. Yes, it has.
Well, and looking at the game now,
Crazy.
it still looks like a good game to play in modern standard.
Yeah, looking at this B-roll, it's
it does not look aged.
No, it really doesn't. And
Even
now it's in
graphically.
4K, and yeah, it's
How much of it was it a full just a remaster, or did they tweak stuff? Do you know?
No, it's just all tech. So, all new textures and character models and stuff like that, but they haven't like removed any missions or added any missions or anything like that. So
But it's not just we turned the resolution up. They actually did.
Oh, they did work. Yeah. It's actually developed by Beanox. The remaster was. It wasn't even developed by Infinity Ward. Beanox, by the way, hey, they're coming on, man. Like they put out a couple games when they were first kind of got started that were pretty bad. But they've really kind of come through for Activision here over the last few years. Didn't Beanox?
Yeah, they started as kind of like an also-ran Spider-Man developer.
And didn't they also make Tony Hawk Ride, where you actually had the plastic board?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think they did. And boy, that was awful. So to see them making stuff like this,
could have made that good though.
Yeah, but Beanox has come a long, long way from where they were when they started. But I'm going to give this a go. You think you'll play it, Matt?
Modern Warfare 2?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. What about you, Mitch? You going to give it a go?
Depending on price.
So have you played it?
No.
Never played it.
It's a game I definitely do want to play. At the moment, it depends on price. Also, we do have some big games coming out right now that maybe this is a game more towards after I finish Final Fantasy VII Remake, because we have Resident Evil coming out this weekend, and then we have Final Fantasy next weekend. But it's pretty dry after that in regards to big console releases for a while, except for Gears Tactics at the end of the month.
I got the press release this morning from Activision when it was made official, and they included everything in the press release but the price. And I didn't have time to go to PSN and see if the price was
someone
up there.
says it's $20.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's actually worth my time.
I think
money.
I think that's the right price. I think that'll get people to buy it and play it. It definitely isn't not a stumbling block for me. $20, that's like whatever. I mean, it's only 6 hours long, maybe. It's not that long. Call of Duty campaigns have been short for a really long time, and they started that way with Infinity Ward stuff. So for $20, in my opinion, one of the best shooting campaigns ever released.
Yeah.
That
I'll pay
appears
$20
to
for that faster than I'll pay $20 for Jedi Academy. That's for sure.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. All right, let's move on to our last topic of episode 205. We've been talking a lot about Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 over the last 2 months, but really it's heated up over the last month. And so we wanted to kind of simmer all our thoughts down into some cogent analysis that you guys can take away as valuable. So what we've decided to do is we've decided to do a next-gen report card where we look at both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X in 4 categories and then decide for each platform which one is doing the better job. Some of these are going to be a little difficult because we don't have enough information or whatever, but I think that's part of this because some of the categories we're going to discuss are like messaging and momentum. And I think that's important leading up to the launch of any product, not just a video game console. So some categories, I think one platform will have an advantage over the other and vice versa. So I think it'll all even out. And we'll try to figure out, as of right now, which of the two consoles we feel like is leading the next gen race. We're going to start off with tech. And because this is the easiest one, I believe. It's black and white in a lot of cases, although in this case, not. Maybe it's black and gray instead of black and white. We have the Xbox Series X, which is just basically a raw horsepower beast that's just going to blunt force trauma its way through game code. Then we have the PlayStation 5, where if you look at its specs on paper, they seem to be a little bit lower than Series X. But if you followed Mark Cerny's presentation, he explains how the system can be used by skilled developers to essentially squeeze about the same amount of performance out of it if you want to write to the metals, as they say. So, Matt, between those two, which one do you think has the advantage right now?
I mean, on paper, it's the Xbox, but I would argue that power doesn't mean anything really when the rubber hits the road, because
we'll
the
get to those other
system
categories.
Of any generation,
right now, we're talking about tech.
But like, that's what I'm saying is like, tech is irrelevant, because if it was relevant, the Wii wouldn't have won that generation. And we don't know who's winning the tech war on this, because there's no way to compare them quite yet. Like PlayStation 5 is doing such weird shit in terms of trying to optimize how it does what it does, that it's just hard to say, like, because I mean, I don't think Cerny's lying. Like, I think Cerny's a tech genius. Like, if anyone can pull off what he's saying that thing does, it's Cerny and his team. But we just don't quite know why it matters yet. Or whether it can kind of, the key is going to be, is there extra work required to keep parity with what the Xbox can do brute force-wise? And
I think
will
there is.
multi-platform
I think that's
developers,
pretty safe to assume there is.
Yeah. And will multi-platform developers be willing to do that work? Or rather, not developers, will publishers be willing to spend the time and money required to get that parity? Will it matter? And I would argue that we don't know that yet until we start seeing what these multi-platform games look like. But if you're going to talk about, like, just on paper, probably the Series X has a very minor edge. And the edge gets bigger the more you don't know what you're talking about.
That's funny. Mitch, what do you say for tech?
On paper, yeah. I think Matt brings up a good point in regards, and I think it's right in regards to not fully understanding what the tech really does. I think, one of our categories is messaging, and I think we'll get to it in a minute, but I think the messaging of understanding the context of it affecting the console itself, I think we don't fully realize what it is yet. So I think, in a slight reason, I think it's a little too early.
Well,
I think that will also help when we see the OS.
That's the point of this discussion. It's early.
Yeah, it's really early to try to compare this tech because we don't understand it.
So you're not going to pick one?
I said Xbox on paper has a tech advantage for sure, but not understanding what the PlayStation does, we can't really fully realize what it's going to be.
It'd be easier to figure this out once we see their OSs and sort of see more of like what the personality or flavor they're going for, which each of the systems is, because like that tends to teach you a whole lot about the attitude that the company's approaching the console with, and we just don't know that yet. Other than like it's going to load real fast.
And plus, they both showed two completely different types of emphases with these consoles. So, example, like Microsoft showed off the fast loading, where Sony is more focused on, No,
Sony showed off fast loading first.
Well, in secret. That's not. I don't know if that. I mean, there was a tech thing, but we don't know if that's legit in regards to, it wasn't. They didn't show it off in a conference, so they didn't say in regards to like how fast. Never mind. Forget. But I think that they may show the fast loading. Yes, you do have that. I think the other elements are vastly different of what they are talking about, that tech-wise it's hard to understand until you can have all of that together and put it side by side.
I think it's very easy to say Xbox right now. I don't think it's even close, because we already know that raw numbers PlayStation 5 can't keep up. So in order for PlayStation 5 to have games that look as good as Xbox Series X games, the developers are going to have to do extra work. Will they? The vast majority, probably so. I start talking about the smaller Japanese developers. Are they going to do it? They won't. They don't.
But if you look at Cerny's presentation, he specifically states in it that they worked on reducing the time between generation of hardware of creating games. And they talked about each of the consoles and how long it took for them as companies, as game creators, to turn around on that new generation of hardware. And this one is just as short as any of the consoles they've made before. So I think in difficulty to create with this hardware, I think that's not correct.
What do you mean it's not correct?
Because they said they made the hardware accessible for the developers.
Yeah, but that's the same thing. It's the same thing with Xbox Series X, dude. It's even more accessible to developers. You don't have to manage like the pipelines inside the Series X. To me, right now, Xbox clear advantage, and I think all three of us voted for it anyway. Yeah. So Xbox. Next up, the games. So this might be the toughest one, I think, to kind of figure out software, because right now with Xbox, we know about more games for Series X, but a lot of it also is like, hey, Microsoft bought a bunch of new studios. They're all working on stuff, and we have seen some of the stuff. Like we've seen a couple games from a couple of their acquisitions already. And obviously we know Halo Infinite is coming at launch. Really, it's a wild card for PlayStation. We've seen Godfall, and then there was like a new game called Quantum Error that was announced this week for PlayStation 5. WRC 9 was confirmed for PlayStation 5, and that's pretty much it. Also, by the way, most of those games are also confirmed for Xbox Series X. So how do you guys feel about software as where it sits right now? What about the prospect? I guess a lot of times you're looking at the prospects of it, right, Matt?
I have no anything on software right now. We don't know anything. Like Halo Infinite, sure. Like we know what the deal is with that. There's probably going to be a Forza.
Hellblade we're seeing right now. That's another Series X game.
Hellblade, but Hellblade is not launched. Hellblade is next year.
Yeah.
Godfall, who cares? Sony's first party stuff is where the big guns are for them. We just don't know anything yet.
Yeah, they showed a lot of third-party.
We got a couple months before we see anything that can make us like sit up and bark about any of that. Really,
I think it's easily Sony. Just even if you just look at what IP does Microsoft have versus what IP does Sony have. It's not Naughty Dog is going to forget how to make great games, or Insomniac's going to forget how to make great games, or Sucker Punch is going to forget how to make great games.
Are you talking about like the whole life of the console or launch here?
Just in general, like right now, which platform has the advantage in each of these four categories? And I think it's still, even though Microsoft made big strides by buying those studios, right now it's all just conjecture and promise. These studios in Sony stables are proven over and over again. They're not going anywhere.
But several of those big studios are about to put out things they've been working on for years. We're not going to see their PlayStation 5 output until 2022 or 2023. So how relevant is that? Yeah, at least Microsoft, as much as I'm not super excited about Halo Infinite, at least Halo Infinite's coming this year.
It is.
We're not going to see another Naughty Dog game for years from now. We might not see another Sucker Punch game till the end of next gen. Like, we don't know. Like,
my one question, though.
Obviously, Sony has the first-party stuff that I'm more interested in, but that's not a thing that's in my immediate buying decision future, if that makes any sense.
Well, my question for both of you probably would be do you think there's an advantage with Sony because their next-gen games are going to be exclusive to that console, where here Microsoft, Halo Infinite, it's coming for both consoles. Hellblade may be coming for both consoles. They committed to a 2-year window where it doesn't matter. You just have to have an Xbox, which I think affects potentially how good the game could potentially be because you're not taking full advantage of that hardware.
Good point, Mitch. Yep, agreed.
I think you are taking full advantage of the hardware because that's the point of the modularity. It's like
you're relying on your scaling.
PC games do that all the time. Like you're just basically turning bells and whistles on and off, and that really historically hasn't hurt anything. So I'm not too worried about that. But I do think it might be tempting, certainly in the tighter economic times we have, to just play Halo Infinite on your Xbox One.
But I think that's a serious disservice to your customer because, even the jump between PS3, PS4, PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3, there are significant differences in those games, whether that's less enemies, more enemies, the animation isn't as good. It clearly is a downgrade of that other game, and I think it disservices to your customer to say, hey, you can experience the game on both systems where we're really not experiencing the same game.
I don't agree with that. The more things you can play something on, the better. Like, democratize it and then exclusivize it later on when people are willing to like jump into the next gen and the next gen is established and there's a bundle worth buying and there's a library worth owning. I don't think that. I think Microsoft's approach is much more consumer friendly.
Let me give you an example. Because like we had Star Wars: The Force Unleashed came out for PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, all those generations of hardware, the 2 gens. Clearly, the game was not very good as a PS2 generation hardware game. It clearly was completely different. It had the same story, had the same characters, didn't look as good. The motion graphics in regards to the animation didn't work as well. The physics weren't working as great. You know, it's a completely different experience. You don't think that matters?
No.
I think it matters a little
because
bit.
they're not making different versions of these games. You're just turning the settings down. It's not the same thing as making a gimped Wii version of something back in the day. You're just going to have lower res or less detailed character models or no ray tracing, that kind of thing. And that's a different thing. You're not selling a different game to somebody. You're just saying, hey, you don't want to spend $500 on this new system? You can still play this game you want to play. And there's no downside to that except that you've decided to save some money and play something in a lesser capacity, which is the same decision people make on PC all the time when they decide not to throw however much money at the latest NVIDIA card. And it's fine.
So you're not seeing it as the next gen is just only going to be a graphical difference between these two things. It's not going to be, the AI is going to be different and interact differently with the game and the levels. The level design.
He's making a good point, Matt, that there's more to games than just graphics.
Here's a dirty little secret about AI. AI hasn't changed in generations. It's just slightly different pathing, et cetera, et cetera. There is a chance that the rapid access of the hard drives on these new systems that Cerny described is going to lead to an ability to do something like that, or like he said, changing how level design is done. But that kind of stuff is not going to come into its own until a little later on, because launch games never do. Launch games never take full advantage of the new bells and whistles of hardware. It's just not how it works. You have to learn to do that. Like Uncharted 1 was not a launch game, but Uncharted 1 is not Uncharted 2, which is not Uncharted 3. And there's a learning process. And I think as that learning process happens and these developers learn, with this new rapid access SSD, we can have this section be like this, but that's going to make it so we can't really run it on the last gen systems. You're going to have to make the decision to make either a different version of the game or just say, well, if you want to play this, you got to buy a PlayStation 5. And I think that time will come a year to a year and a half into the PlayStation 5's lifetime, and that's just how it's going to slowly push you to buy that new system, and that's fine. But early on, you don't want to make that transition too harsh, and that is a fair decision on the part of both companies.
I think we have to wrap this up. Let me get my point in here. I think the final thing that seals it for me is that I've watched year after year after year after year on Xbox where it's just Gears, Halo, Forza, Gears, Halo, Forza, Gears, Halo, just over and over and over again. And while Microsoft, it was smart to make these purchases, and they could very well work out, and it could end up that Microsoft's stable of first-party studios destroys Sony's stable of first-party studios. However, that is all wishful thinking and conjecture. I know Sony studios are some of the best in the world. I know they're not going to release broken games. To me, that's what settles it. It's like there's just a lot of wishful thinking and hoping that Microsoft can get itself together, and I know for a fact that Sony's first-party studios already have it together and then some. So
I think to sum it up really easily would be we're more excited about the new first-party Sony platform or the next first-party Sony game than the next Hellblade. We're probably more excited about that than even though Hellblade would be a great game.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. No.
Even though Hellblade would be a great game, will it match that tier, that polish? Who knows? It's unpredictable.
It depends what the next Sony game is. Like if the next Sony game's Horizon 2, sure. If the next Sony game is, I don't know, whatever next thing, some
Detroit
other company
Become Human 2.
Well, they're not doing that anymore, are they? They let them go.
All right, so it looks like for that category, we've got Would you go with Xbox, Matt, for this?
I go with neither.
Okay, so you abstain.
Until I see actual games, everything's conjecture.
Okay, so you abstain, and Mitch and I go Sony. So I guess Sony wins that one. Next up, messaging. This one, to me, might be the easiest one because one has done a lot of it, and the other one has done hardly any of it. Microsoft, with Series X being the one that's done a ton of the messaging, and PlayStation being the one that hasn't really done much of it. Other than that presentation that we got from Cerny, most of the information we have from it has been from patent leaks or photos on the internet of the dev kits and stuff like that. A lot of the stuff we've been learning about PlayStation 5 hasn't actually come from PlayStation. On the other hand, it feels like everything we know about Series X has come from an official source at Microsoft or via proxy with, Digital Foundry or one of the sites that they trust to kind of handle the tech stuff there. I think just overall raw number quantity of messaging, I think it's a runaway win for Xbox. What do you guys think? Matt?
I would argue we don't actually really know that much more about one or the other. We know what the Xbox looks like, and that's about it. That's different to me. Like, that Cerny talk covered a whole lot of the same things we know about the Xbox, just in a more boring fashion. And until we know more about like what it does and what each things translate into the user experience, the user interface, the bells and whistles that are in the UI and the OS, and also again, what it costs. Like, I don't know if any of the messaging at this point matters beyond a very specific core demographic that cares about that kind of thing. So I don't know. I feel like I'm about on even ground with both of them. I think Xbox has presented it in a more entertaining fashion, just in the sense that we got to see the stuff at the Game Awards, and that was more of a reveal as opposed to a tech talk like we got with Cerny's GDC thing.
Yep.
But I don't feel like either one of them is. I think one of them has done it in a more consumer-friendly way, but I don't think we know more about one or the other yet. And we're gonna have to. We're in this really gonna be really dead zone from now, I think, until what would have been E3.
Yeah, I agree. But I think even if you just want to look at it on a base level, there's a trailer for Xbox Series X. We have nothing for PlayStation 5.
Yeah, well, until Sony wants to show us what the damn thing looks like, or at least reassure us that it doesn't look like those weird dev kits or whatever those things are that leaked.
Yeah. And I mean,
we just don't know.
Yeah, we still don't know like what anything looks like on PlayStation. You're right. I mean, it's very simple to say that they showed the console, PlayStation hasn't, but it's more than that. It's being able to see the ports on the back of it and seeing the new proprietary memory cards and seeing the controller. Like, we've seen the controller for Series X already. We haven't seen the controller other than patents. We haven't seen the controller for PlayStation 5 at all. So
I do think the last category and what you said about the last category kind of informs how much this one matters in a sense, because like, yeah, I know what the ports on the back of that Xbox look like, but I sure would prefer to know when Horizon 2 is coming out. It's like, it's just, I got to know whether this PlayStation lineup is going to be exciting as opposed to like the Xbox lineup, which seems fine, but not the launch lineup for the Xbox seems fine, but it doesn't like make me excited. Halo and Forza again doesn't make me excited. Whereas like if you have a couple surprises up your sleeve from Sony first party, that could get me excited for fall for the PlayStation 5, but we just don't know. And that's sort of where I am here. It's like, oh yeah, it's cool how the Xbox is 2 GameCubes stacked on top of it. Where are the games? Like it just feels like I'm trying to like pretend I'm satisfied with this like scrap of a meal when really you really need to show me what we're going to play.
Well, I think what everyone's losing sight on, which is a little frustrating while listening to these people talk about, and us in general talk about this stuff. Microsoft went really early. Like, we do not hear about tech and consoles this early in the year when a console is coming out next year. I'm using last year as a reference because Sony did a conference, but in that conference, they just showed off games and hardware. That's all they showed.
What are you talking about? Sony did a conference.
Not last year, sorry. The last generation of hardware, the year of, they did one in March. They did a conference to show off the games.
Well, they're following the exact same pattern as they did with PlayStation 4.
And Microsoft decided to go early, and that changes things. That changes, because people now want the information sooner. And it's like, you're going to get this information and then you got to sit on it for a long, long time. I think Sony is just trying to say, hey, get the information out, give ourselves a buffer window to ramp up that hype later than to just release all this information in like Microsoft did in December. Like they show off the console in December.
Microsoft's been surprisingly casual about admitting like, yeah, new system's coming. Like,
yeah.
Well, even as much as a year ago, there was like, yeah, we got stuff coming. We got a new system coming. It's working on it.
I mean, we knew about the 2 different versions last year.
Yeah.
That there was going to be
Sony locked everything down, and we barely know there. I mean, Sony's like the friend that disappeared last year, and we don't know like what they're doing or where they went or if they're still living where they used to live or like it's the difference in how both of them are approaching like this gen is striking.
Because here's the thing. So we're talking about messaging now. And I think we probably all agree that Xbox probably wins this category.
Because I would say because they were first.
But
they were
the next category is momentum. And because Sony pulled back a little bit in the prior category with this, which is messaging, has that actually helped Sony in the next category, which is momentum? Because we don't know a lot about PlayStation 5. Do you think that there's still a lot more interest in PlayStation 5 right now than there is in Series X? Because it's a kind of a known quantity at this point.
I think there is an element of like, if they're playing this close and this quiet, they must have something good.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's an assumption that may or may not be true, but there's an assumption I think that there's a sense in which how Sony has done this projects confidence.
Yep. Yeah. And I would say Microsoft coming out first with all this stuff, I think that showed confidence at first too, but you didn't see PlayStation make the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, Microsoft is announcing this stuff, like, so now we're going to need to announce it. They waited a long freaking time, which does exude a sense of confidence for sure. Like it makes it seem
this
like
is a much better way to say next gen starts when we say it starts, rather than just saying that at a press conference like they did for the PS3.
Or you also could put it in perspective as it's like a poker game, and Microsoft thinks they can win with a pair.
By the way, Kenny Rogers, rest in peace.
But they think they
Mitch,
can
do you
win.
know who Kenny Rogers is?
I have no idea who that is. No idea.
I knew it. I knew you had no idea.
Face and you instantly knew.
Have you ever heard the song "The Gambler" before?
No.
Yeah, you got to know when to hold 'em.
I know that song. Yeah. Sorry, I usually don't know song titles. I know if you
I know
sing
that
it,
whole song by heart, by the way.
I know when to fold it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I think I think Microsoft, in a sense, threw your hand out a little early, and Sony's just waiting, and they're like, I'm waiting for the river the last card to flip, and I'll have a full house just right here for you. Like, there's confidence, like Matt said, in that quietness that really makes it seem as if they have something bigger to show, and they're just waiting for that opportune moment to undercut everything Microsoft is doing. And Microsoft is trying to play what they think is the long game, but I think Sony is probably playing a better long game right now because they don't have as much info.
I do think Microsoft is going to need a stronger lineup to recapture the interest once all the cards are on the table, to continue Mitch's card playing metaphor. You really are going to have, like, better be some stuff in there that makes my eyebrows go up more than Halo. And I know that Halo is supposed to be the 800-pound gorilla, but I really hope at this point Microsoft
it's not anymore,
has learned,
I don't think.
Yeah, Microsoft has to learn that is not what that is anymore. You need to give me something that makes me go, ooh, exciting. And frankly, I'm willing to buy both consoles or like one or the other. Like I can go either way depending on what the launch lineup looks like. But right now, from what we know of Microsoft, if Sony decides to flip their cards over and that launch hand includes Horizon 2, good night Xbox for me.
I think for a lot of people that would be the case. But, a lot of the casuals who only buy a couple games a year, I think they would disagree with us. I think they would say, oh, it's Halo. But
maybe. I'm really curious. I don't know if any real study or kind of opinion polls have been done on like what kind of cachet Halo still pulls with the mainstream. I'd be very interested to find that out. Yeah. I don't know if Halo is the.
I mean, it might be just for old dudes like us.
Gorilla now, but like it's.
Yeah, I think it holds more sway for older folks than, the influencers and the...
And you could argue that the older folks are the ones that are going to be paying for the consoles.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, it's also like the thing that made Halo
The
when I
kids
was
don't
a
have
kid
$500.
was that multiplayer. The
Yeah.
multiplayer was the thing. We didn't care about the campaign when we bought Halo 2 and Halo 3. We wanted to play multiplayer. Well, that's what my generation all cared about. We cared about drinking Mountain Dew and playing a shit ton of Halo multiplayer all night long, getting the hammer, smashing faces, all that kind of stuff.
Slayer.
Exactly. Campaign meant nothing to us. And so I think when they tried to push the campaign as the big thing for the future of Halo, I think it turned people off.
Well, the campaigns have just sucked since Halo 3.
And it doesn't help they're not great, but they try to make
problem.
an emphasis of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the wrong messaging for that franchise, and it completely turned people off to the point where people don't want to go back.
Well, the other
I don't
thing is
think it was
it was a
necessarily the
pioneer.
wrong messaging.
No,
but
the thing is, it was a
would've
pioneer when
worked
it
if the
came out.
Campaigns have been good.
And it's not a pioneer anymore. When it came out, I had already been playing Star Siege Tribes on my PC with my Voodoo 2 card for a year and a half or 2 years before Halo came out. Halo, to me, was a step back from what I had been playing as a PC player. However, for console players who just came off a GoldenEye, it was a huge step forward. And it was really unlike anything else available on consoles at the time. And it had online play, all this stuff that console players are experiencing for the first time. The problem with Halo is as time went on, it wasn't unique anymore. And instead of just standing on the fact that it was the only thing in town, it now had to stand on the fact that it's the best thing in town. And it's very hard to be the best thing in town. Even if you have a ton of really talented people working on something, there's no guarantee. And so now you have so much more competition. I mean, honestly, Call of Duty killed Halo. It came in and was okay, we'll show you how to do multiplayer now. And that's exactly what they did. And that's why Halo lost its significance. It's not because of a campaign.
They tried to make the pivot on that because they knew Call of Duty was going to eat their multiplayer lunch, but the problem was they did not manage to beat the campaign quality up to match it. You could have made that turn. They could have done that and said, Halo is a single-player focused series now, co-op single-player kind of thing. That's where we're going to focus. It's still multiplayer, but we're going to really blow the doors off of this story-driven experience, and they just didn't.
Yep. Yeah, they fell on their faces pretty much.
Just the whole thing turned out anemic with Halo 4, and they didn't get the mojo back for 5.
Nope.
And this is kind of the last shot, and I don't know where they're
going to
put that emphasis this time.
Here comes the chief to try to
At
save
the
the
moment,
day.
they haven't shown enough.
Yeah.
They need to show more, especially if they're showing the console this much. They should be showing Halo this much, because that doesn't change people's anticipation for the console.
You gotta leave something. You still got another 10 months. You can't just blow the whole thing out now. If this is their big anchor game, that would be the dumbest thing they could ever do.
But
they have to slowly build interest in this thing as it approaches launch.
They already shown their cards. Halo is going to be the thing to change your mind.
Wait, you were just talking about Halo, how they needed to show more of Halo.
Yeah,
that's what you just said.
They might as well show it now, because then they'll get buried later.
No. Okay. So, momentum. My vote goes for PlayStation. Matt, how about you?
I mean, just in terms of kind of market viability, I think PlayStation has the advantage here. Microsoft's the one that has to convince someone to look in their direction. PlayStation's already got the eyes on them.
Okay, and Mitch, although your vote doesn't count really because we've already got two. What's your pick anyway?
It's PlayStation for sure.
Okay, so here to recap: Tech. Matt abstained. Mitch and I both picked Series X. Games, Sony came out the winner. Messaging, Xbox was determined the winner. And momentum, Sony was determined the winner. So of the 4 categories, they were split down the middle, 2-2. So there you go. We solved nothing in the last 20 minutes. We had fun doing it, though. So
we solved the problem of making 20 more minutes of show.
I do think that this is I think that's the right result, though. I think that is pretty kind of apparent of what's really going on with the next gen race right now. There's pros and cons for each one. And there's no easy answer between the two of them. And hopefully as time goes on, that becomes more clear. But I'm not 100% certain it's going to be.
The only real... If the price is different between the two of them, that could really be the only nail in the coffin for one or the other.
Yeah.
But I think they are going to both be the same price.
Okay.
And I think it would be really interesting to play the same game like right after we get these announcements and compare the two to see where we were before and where we are today.
Yep. So lots of time to figure all that stuff out, but I think that was a pretty fun exercise, a good check-in. It wouldn't have worked if we had done it months ago, but I think now with the information that we have, I think it was fun. I enjoyed discussing it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to it. It's time for our Q&A. I can see some of you guys are on it. You already got questions in the chat. Go at Sifted Games in the chat to get your questions answered. It helps us pluck them out, particularly now because usually on this screen I have the chat, and then we can actually bring it into the show, and you guys can see the chat in the archive. However, because we're using Skype to bring Matt in, I got Matt here, and I'll spin him around again like I did last week. My good buddy. We miss you, bro. I'll be seeing you soon to drop off a microphone.
I ruin things.
I'll be seeing you soon to drop off a microphone. So anyway, it's harder for me to see, so thank you guys for going at Sifted Games in here, because that's the only way I can pluck them out. My vision still isn't great either, unfortunately.
I got one ready if you are still waiting on one.
Is it Bat Guys?
No, it's Commander Fett.
Okay, go ahead.
Commander Fett says, do you think the next generation of consoles will be delayed, and will it help the launch lineup? And if delayed, when do you think they'll come out?
No, I don't think they will be.
Microsoft
just said it won't
likely.
be. Yeah, Microsoft literally just a few days ago said they're not going to be delayed, or
Yeah,
Series X won't be delayed.
And a few weeks ago it was a hoax. Things can change very rapidly depending on how quickly things get back on track. But if they do get delayed, they will not slip past the end of March. These things will launch this fiscal year, hell or high water.
To answer his question about would the launch lineup improve? Yes, absolutely. Not only
At the very least, you get a few months more polishing.
Yep. At the very least, you get a few more months of polish on the games you're working on. And if you have that game that's kind of right on the borderline of making launch or not, now maybe it does have a chance. So, more time is always going to help software. Always, no matter what. So, yeah, I think absolutely.
If something launch window can become launch day, that can be only good for the launch.
Yep, absolutely.
Also, side note, we are on level 2 of the hype train.
Nice. I can't even see it, folks. I'm sorry, man.
We did hit level 2 earlier in the stream, but we were talking. I didn't want to interrupt. So.
Okay. Thank you, guys, to everyone who sent in the bits and stuff for that. Really appreciate it.
Well, we got another 10 subscription drop from Sound Wizard earlier as well.
That explains it. Sound Wizard, the frickin' man. Thank you. Look, just thank you for the bits, man. Like right now, everyone losing their jobs and everything. Our Patreon's like going way down. I totally get it. But literally every dollar is going to matter to us over the next couple months as we try to survive through this. So thank you guys. Let's see. Here's one from ETH Demon. What about the demos that Microsoft showed to Digital Foundry? He's asking. What demos did they show to Digital Foundry?
I think they showed Forza. They showed a Forza demo using the new tech. I think that was like a year ago.
Yeah, so when you say what about them, well, if it's Forza, I think we already covered that. Saying that I'm sick of it, Forza, Gears, Halo, Forza, Gears, Halo. That, to me, is not the answer to any of Microsoft's problems. And I would say in general, those three franchises are really not going to be the answer to any of Microsoft's problems. If they were, Microsoft wouldn't have any problems because they've been releasing those games consistently and at a pretty high quality. So, yeah, I would, honestly, when looking at this, I would just kind of eliminate those games from the discussion because they're a known quantity. They're not an X factor that's really going to change the tide of anything.
My only thing I would say to that is if they can, since it's going to be cross-gen with their first party, they should release the demo for someone to play. If you're confident enough in your game, let people get hands on it. Make it change their mind. I think demos are a way to get people to maybe change their minds in regards to how a game plays. Like, put the new Halo on there as a demo for a little bit.
Now, PlayStation did say that, before the end of the year, they'll have PS5 demos up on PlayStation Store.
They did. And we're on level 3.
Oh, awesome. Get that hype train rolling, people. Let's see. I think, yep, that one's already been answered. I can't see this name. Mitchell is alive, I believe. My friends are experiencing fatigue from all the remakes being pumped out rather than new projects. I believe this is why we are seeing less quantity of shovelware and movie tie-in games. Would you rather have remakes and remasters over the shovelware tie-in. Bonus, which remakes, remasters do you think have been unnecessary? What have been the best ones?
I mean, I like remasters of good older games way better than mediocre new games, but
Yeah. And,
that's just
look,
me.
everyone agrees with that because I can see it in Sifted's traffic. I mean, we post debut trailers for new games every day. Every day. At least like 3 or 4 per day, every day. And no matter what we write in that blurb, no matter how much we try to hype them and try to say, hey, if you like this, you should watch this, people just won't watch it. If they just won't. You put up something for a remaster of an old game or a remake of an old, guaranteed top 3 or 4 pieces of content on Sifted that day. Guaranteed. So it's not even a question, really.
I think what's also enticing for these companies to release remasters is because some people don't have the opportunity to experience it the first time around.
Yeah.
Like myself,
Yep.
I can experience now Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 for the first time. Like that's an opportunity they allowed to give me this time around because they did a remaster, and Resident Evil 2 will be my favorite remake.
One that was unnecessary, Destroy All Humans. I really don't see much of a need for them to remake that game, even though it's like THQ Nordics. It was one of their keystone games at E3. It had like a big booth presence and everything. To me, that game didn't need to be remade. What about you, Matt? Can you think of one?
I mean, that's a good pick. I would personally say Crash Bandicoot, but obviously for Activision's pocketbook, that is not true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Destroy All Humans is probably the most like pointless, unless didn't they do one for?
What about SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom? There's another one.
That has a big speedrunning community around it, so it's not. Didn't they do one for Voodoo Vince?
They did. It was just it was just a
inexplicable,
it was
like an
just,
up-res kind of thing.
That's all it was. But still,
But that one, I think, caught me off guard. I'm like, really?
That game was not good when it was released. Obscure Xbox exclusives.
They do that?
Cyber Exile, it looks like. What are your next-gen launch lineup predictions? I think Horizon 2 and Halo Infinite are locks, but beyond that, I can't think of anything.
I don't think Horizon 2 is a lock at all.
I think it's getting there.
I think it's possible. I think it's wishful thinking at this point, but I don't think it's a lock the way Halo is.
Why do you think the comic book is coming out this summer?
Because it's ready.
That's it? You don't think it's to coincide with something important?
No.
Wow. It took them a long time to get it ready. 3 years after the game launched.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're gonna keep building something, but like, I don't know. Like, it might just be to coincide with the PC version.
That's possible.
Sony does have a history of having games slip out of a fall release date.
Yeah, it sure does.
Like it's really feasible to think that it could slip to March.
Yeah.
Obviously, Godfall is a lock probably for PlayStation 5, and I think the other lock is, even though it hasn't been mentioned or really dealt with, is Forza Motorsport 8 or 9, whatever they're on. I don't remember.
Yep. They don't miss. The Forza games don't miss.
New vanilla Forza Motorsport.
Yep, they take turns.
Don't
and
really
they don't
care
miss.
about, but they love showing you whatever the latest sponsored cover car is in their super high definition, ray traced everything. That'll be a big June demo, I think, and whatever we're calling June, since it's not E3 anymore. Like E nothing. I don't know.
E for me. That's pretty much what it is.
E for me. That's good. Yeah.
Here's one from Aussie Brit 2000. What happens when a gamer places their physical copy of a game on top of the Xbox Series X, blocking the fan? Will the gamer get a warning? Will the console gracefully shut down, or will the game melt? Do you think placing the fan on top was a good idea? We found out soon enough when tens of millions will put it to the test. Good question, Aussie. I think it was a bad idea. I really do. I think they need more than one exhaust.
Really something as light as a game case is not going to block the heat dissipation.
Well, it actually might blow the game off the top. There might be enough, because that is the only port really for the exhaust on the Series X. There may be so much air going up through that thing, you may not be able to set a game on top of it without it like knocking it off the top of it. I think it should have
experiments with that thing.
I think they should have more than one exit port for hot air. I'll just put it to you that way. Because with the way entertainment centers are, like, sometimes like the one side of my console is pushed up against like one of the slats in like the shelving, but that's okay because there's vents on the right and on the back. I just don't like knowing that there's one way you can never orient your console no matter what. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
I think
upside down?
Or sideways if you have the vent up against like the side wall of your entertainment center or whatever. You have to make sure it's always facing the other way. Nitpicky, but
Yeah, I think if you have heat issues at your apartment or house, you just put the console next to your hands. Nice hand warmer.
Let's see. Here's one from Vincent. What's the latest Sony could reveal things? Could it pull an Apple and reveal it first week of October and launch it the next week?
No.
I mean, they could. I don't think that would work too well. You want to do it more of a movie launch because a phone is a more essential purchase. Whereas also like the Apple cult is a real thing.
Yeah.
As someone who has used Apple products for 30 some years, like that's people going to run out and buy that thing tomorrow no matter what. But like with a console, I think you want like a month of run up. We want buses with the thing plastered on it. You want advertisements for it on the NFL games, even if there are no people in the stadiums. Like you need to let people. It's like a movie. You need to let people know it's coming, and about a month is your lead time for that.
Also precedent. Apple has that precedent of doing something like that.
Right.
That's
just,
something
like,
that's
also,
never
like,
going to change for them. So here's Sony. They're not going to do something this way extreme. I mean, clearly they're showing with what they did with the games, talking about the hardware just last week. They're staying on the same track they did last time. So I don't see them deferring.
Also, while
hardcore.
the core gaming demographic doesn't determine what's a big hit or not until it's like a macro degree in the marketplace. The amount of pissed off people if they don't show anything in June, like I don't think you want to play with that piranha at this point. Like you got to give us something to talk about from the beginning of summer to like the big run up to the launch. So yeah, I don't see that really happening.
I would say this, of the three, I think PlayStation could probably pull it off the easiest.
Oh, they could if
Probably.
they did. Yeah.
But still, they're not going to do it.
Not a smart idea.
Yep. Next up, Mike's Q, our VO guy. What's up, Mike's Q? Hope you're doing well, man. Hope you're surviving out there in Lancaster, PA, my old stomping grounds. Why do you think licensed games are given to bad developers? Or is it just not enough time to make a good game? I am playing the Lord of the Rings beat-em-ups for GameCube, and they are awesome. And you are right. Those beat-em-ups are really freaking awesome. But that is a flash in the pan, I would say. That is kind of an exception. Like, for instance, I remember that those Lord of the Rings beat-em-ups are awesome. So, they were an anomaly, something that isn't typical and that no one expected when they came out. So I hear you, but
I still have my version on the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
But they were also like a lot of developers that make bad licensed games are not bad developers.
Yeah.
Like they just are not given the time frame. They're not given, the space to design something that it's just like kind of a throw together thing. I mean, the Lord of the Rings games got lucky in that they were by Stormfront, which was a very talented studio that was excited to make them and it got the time to do it. But even companies that have churned out like what would you consider a mediocre licensed game now and again, like Raven back in the day, Raven got that extra year when Wolverine Origins got delayed, the movie, to polish their Wolverine Origins game, and that game turned out to be one of the best licensed games ever.
Yeah, isn't it dependent on like when the property is going to release something? That's the whole reason they do it, right?
It's very, very dependent on that, and you have no control over how long it takes to make a good game. You just have to make something that can be released when it's going to be released, and that's what happens.
You also have very little control over ideas that you want to put into the game. There's always a veto power with the license holder, and that causes problems. In fact, that generally causes most of the problems. When the license holder gets involved with the game's development, that's when it all goes to crap. All the times where you've let the developer do their thing, that's when you get good licensed games.
Yeah, I have a very hard time calling any developer that makes a bad licensed game a bad developer. Like there's too many X factors and too many things outside of the developer's control to judge them on something like that. 9 times out of 10, if not more.
Okay, we'll take one more question. I believe this is from Toda Mish. I can't read it. It's in orange on black. How much Game Pass will be included with an Xbox Series X?
I would give them a 3-month trial.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the sweet spot. I think that's enough to where you understand everything about it. You understand what you're going to get out of it. You understand how often games come in and out of it, and you understand how much you're going to use it. So yeah, I think
and you can give them an example of what kind of games will rotate in on it.
Yep.
Like you want to make an impression on those 2 months.
Yep. Absolutely.
For some reason, for how much they've been banking on it, I'm thinking 6 months. Like I'm thinking they're really gonna try to push Game Pass on you to have you enjoy it so much you're gonna totally forget 6 months that you have your credit card in that subscription.
I'd say that would depend on how good their lineup is. If they're at a point where they're like, we have all these studios and none of them have games done, so what are we gonna do? Then I could see 6 months. If they have a decent launch lineup, I'd say 3.
Yeah, if we get 6 months, you're not going to see Hellblade for a while.
Yep,
that's for sure.
Exactly, because they're trying to distract you. They're like, hey, look over here, and ignore the fact that we don't have any games that you really want to play. So, yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Depending on launch lineup is how long you would want to give that away for free. All right, so that's it for GameFace 205. Like I said, the last episode of the show that's going to look like this for quite a while. We're going to go into the lab and try to cook up something for GameFace going forward, but it will definitely look different than what you're used to from the last 5 years or so of the show. But again, we're in the same boat as everybody else, and we're just going to roll with the punches and do the best that we can. So thanks to everybody who got on the stream today. We were actually able to promote the stream this time. Last week we weren't able to, and I do want to apologize for that. I know a lot of you guys were like, what the hell happened to GameFace? We actually started the show, 30 minutes later than normal last week?
20 minutes.
But it was like a scramble to get the show ready because we had to get Matt's Skype set up, and there was a bunch of problems with the audio and things. And so I just wanted to get the show started so we weren't here all frickin' day, and we didn't do pre-production or pre-promotion. We did do that today. It looks like a bunch more of you made it into the show today, which is good. But, I just want to say on a personal level, everyone's got to be tough. It sucks what's going on right now. We just got to all buckle down and just bite the bullet. Thank God we're all gamers. I see all my friends who don't play games. They're struggling, man. They're losing it. They're like, I don't know what to do anymore. I had all these old hobbies that I got rid of.
Also not bad not having any kids.
That helps too. Yeah, absolutely. My friends that have kids are like losing their minds right now. So I feel for any of you guys who are at home. I think that everyone has a new appreciation now for teachers who deal with our rugrats every day, all day, while we go about our lives. I know all my friends, all my sisters and brothers who have kids, they're all flipping out. So stay strong, people. I don't think there's an end in sight right now. But the good thing is that we're gamers, and so we're used to this. And there are a bunch of great games coming out right now. For instance, the remake of Resident Evil 3, which we'll talk about next week, is coming up soon. So as you guys are all finishing Doom, finishing off Animal Crossing, here comes Resident Evil. And pretty much for the rest of the year.
That backlog you've been building for years, this is what it's for.
Yeah, clean it off. Finish it. Get rid of your backlog. We can do it. I'm not so sure about a lot of other people if they're going to be able to do it, but we have trained for this, young Padawans. We can totally handle it. So anyway, we're going to be here for you guys, even though the form of the show may change a little bit over the next week or two. We're going to be here, and we're going to keep doing everything we can to keep bringing you guys content throughout this total insanity. But I love you guys. I'm thinking about all you guys all over the world. I know people are suffering, and people are losing their jobs, and all we can do is just send out all the positive vibes we can. Come on SIFTD.net. We're there for you guys. I mean, that's the great thing about building a community is that we can be support for each other in tough times. So we'll see you guys next week. Stream should be live at the same time. It's not going to look like this, but it should be live around 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. GameFace is up and out.